Chapter 2269. This is Heavenly Fire Mithril, an extremely rare saint-grade forging material. Emolien smiled as he whispered into her ear. Jojo, what are we going to do? You're rich. Sure enough, when the little fellow heard the word rich, her eyes lit up slightly. Originally, I had been looking for a material that could upgrade the ferrule to a divine weapon for you. This Heavenly Fire Mithril really exceeded my expectations. It's pretty good. Arbor understood. She hugged his slender neck and asked happily, My MOMO can be upgraded, right? Emolien nodded, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. But can we give it another name? We can call it Heavenly Fire Ruler in the future. MOMO. If he wasn't careful, Emolien would think that she was calling him. MOMO is so affectionate. The little fellow blinked and said. Emolien pressed down on the back of her little head, and suddenly covered her little mouth. Miss Chow was caught off guard. She only felt a touch of gentleness covering her and kissing her. For some reason, she almost couldn't control her heartbeat. Thump thump. Thump thump. She could almost clearly hear her own drumming heartbeat, as if it was going to jump out of her chest. This guy actually launched a surprise attack. Miss Chow bit him hard. The man chuckled softly and murmured, Jojo, it hurts. Then he deepened the sudden kiss. Arbor felt as if the depths of her soul were being pulled by something, and she was about to sink into it bit by bit. She opened her eyes and looked at his blurred eyes that were so close to her. Her heart skipped a beat. This person's phoenix eyes were too beautiful. There seemed to be broken starlight in them. When he looked at her in a daze, it was as if he wanted to pull her in bit by bit. A strand of his black hair flowed down, fluttering by her ear. She only heard him murmuring beside her lips, I'm punishing you for being perfunctory just now. If you're disobedient, you have to be punished. Miss Chow blinked. Suddenly, she exerted force with her hand and pulled him down. Not to be outdone, she kissed him forcefully with a fierce look on her face. Prince Emo chuckled. With a flick of his sleeve he picked her up. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had already sat down by the bed. Arbor tilted his head and looked at him. His little hands struggled hard but he couldn't break free. Don't even think about running. The man hugged her and sat her on his lap. He stretched out his arms and hugged her slender waist. He rubbed her hair. You want to run away after kissing me? No way. Who ran away? His little face was so hot that it was about to boil. But the little guy still had a stubborn look on his face as he raised his chin and shouted. What? You don't want to admit it? He said with a smile. His fingers twirled a strand of hair by her cheek, and he whispered into her ear. If I didn't catch you just now, you would have run away by now. Do you think I don't understand your personality of running away after flirting? Arbor couldn't help but want to laugh. She tried her best to keep a straight face as she turned back to look at him expressionlessly. But when she met his half-smile, she couldn't help but burst out laughing. She angrily punched him. You've gotten yourself into trouble. You've offended the little emperor. The smile in the crown prince's eyes deepened. He hugged her and shook her. Okay. I won't tease you anymore. Look, these two pieces of Heavenly Fire secret silver are quite big. After you finish making your ruler, there should be some left. When the time comes, this husband will help you improve to bow. Chapter 2270. Miss Chow reached out and touched the two ice-cold stones. She stroked them with her small hand and transmitted a wisp of spiritual awareness. She watched as a layer of fire appeared on the stones, instantly enveloping the two of them in a fire barrier. Why would such a change happen when I transmitted a wisp of spiritual awareness? Do you know of a secret cultivation method in the upper 3 provinces? Some large clans use coiling dragon stones to test their children's aptitude when they are born. They select extremely talented disciples and let them cultivate freely in the early stages to nurture their spirit meridians and accumulate strength. When they reach adulthood, they use a secret method to directly help them advance to the entry level of the god realm. In the future, their cultivation speed will be much faster than ordinary people. Emolien pulled down her small hand and rubbed it in her own. As everyone knows, only those who comprehend a trace of the origin power of the 5 spirits of heaven and earth can successfully advance to the spiritual realm. On our Seacombe planet, It's precisely because the spiritual energy is weak and unable to comprehend the power of the five spirits that a large number of people are prevented from advancing to the spiritual realm. Arbor nodded, thinking inwardly, when I gain a firm foothold in the divine continent, I'll bring Shaolin and the others over. Her younger brother and sister's aptitudes are quite good. Wouldn't it be a waste of talent to leave them on Seacombe Planet? This secret method must be carried out in conjunction with the five spirits' secret silver. That's it. Arbor looked surprised. Her small mouth opened slightly, and a thought flashed through her mind. Oh, I understand. Those who use the secret method to advance use this kind of heavenly fire secret silver to replace the comprehension of the five spirits' origin power, right? Emolian nodded, smiling as she lowered her head and lightly pecked her small mouth. Because they themselves have skipped the spiritual realm, but the comprehension of the five spirits is indispensable. If they want to quickly proceed with the comprehension of the five spirits, they have to take a shortcut. The aristocratic families of the upper three provinces are just this rich and overbearing. Actually, this kind of stone is very useful when added to divine artifacts or even sacred artifacts. It's too low-end to just use it to replace the comprehension of the five spirits. After all, in my opinion, people who can't even comprehend the five spirits' origin power can't be considered to have good aptitudes. Emolien's eyes were indifferent, and her tone was slightly mocking. Good aptitude from birth? But it doesn't mean that their aptitudes are still good in the next 10 years or so. Idiots will always be idiots. He smiled and lowered his head to look at Arbor. His gaze was very gentle. Unlike my Jojo, who was able to sense the origins of the five spirits in the lower realm. He even sensed the holy water, holy wood and holy earth. Arbor was a little excited by her praise, but he was still a little embarrassed. Actually, the holy water was a legacy item of the sect, so it was best not to mention it for now. That Holywood, this thing, she still didn't know why it had been in her body since she was young. As for the Holy Land, it was quite funny. It had come knocking on his door. Jojo, why are you so smart? Emolian leaned closer to her and rubbed her cheeks with a smile. Arbor blushed at his compliment. Actually, it's not that great. Nonsense, it's amazing. Emolian reached out and threw the 2 pieces of mithril into her inner world. She stretched out her hand and said, "Give me the ferrule and debeo first. This time, the forging will take about half a month. Is there any problem?" Arbor shook her head. What problem could there be? Anyway, she had her husband by her side. She didn't even need to fight by herself. Okay, then leave it with me for a while. Ah, my beautiful little master. Do you have any orders for me? The little golem jumped out and flattered as usual. Emolian put away the ferrule that Arbor handed over, and also put away the muttering golem debeo. Chapter 2271. Can you make debeo stop being so noisy after the modification? That won't do. Being noisy is his specialty. Emolian smiled and tapped her forehead lightly. Imitating debeo's tone, he said, "Ah, my beautiful little master." Arbor rolled her eyes at him. She was 200% sure that Emolian had taught him that. Emolian smiled and hugged her waist tightly. Jojo, this heavenly fire ruler will grow into a divine weapon in the future. You and the ruler have always been telepathically connected. During battle, you can merge it into your body and become one with it. Emolian paused and said, "When the time comes, you will be able to use the fire spirit on this piece of heavenly fire secret silver." I checked just now. After the ruler merges with this heavenly fire secret silver, it should be able to produce a spiritual fire of 7th level and above. Arbor was really energized now. She turned her little face to look at him and said, "You mean, as long as I merge the weapon into my body, I will be able to control this 7th level spiritual fire?" Emolian nodded. Yes. Heavens, she could merge the weapon into her body and use the spiritual fire. When Arbor heard this, she immediately revealed an excited expression. The biggest difference between a divine weapon and a spiritual weapon is that after the user and the weapon become one, the divine weapon will be more effective. But merging the weapon isn't that easy. Emolian looked at her with a smile. But I believe that Jojo will be fine. What happens if the merging fails? The user will be injured, and the divine weapon will be destroyed. Arbor was stunned. It has such a big impact. Emolian nodded. Divine weapons all have their own senses. If it is unwilling to become one with the weapon, it will explode on its own in most cases, harming others in itself. But Jojo doesn't need to worry at all. You and the ruler have been together for so many years. Your hearts are already connected. There is no chance of it exploding on its own if it injures you. Arbor nodded her little head. She naturally knew that her Momo was the best. This level 7 spiritual fire cannot be mentioned in the same breath as your holy water and holy wood. Its level is indeed a little low. When we find heavenly fire mithril that is of a higher level, I will reforge it for you, and you will be able to upgrade your fire spirit. Arbor, on the other hand, was very satisfied. She was a person who couldn't comprehend the power of the fire spirit. Being able to use the 7th rank fire spirit through the man weapon Unite was already a stroke of luck. How could she be picky? Alright, go to bed early. I'll go and forge it for you tomorrow morning. Emolian hugged her and reached out to undo her belt. The little fellow immediately jumped down from his lap and ran into the inner room. He couldn't help but stutter. I took a bath. Don't follow me. Emolian sat on the edge of the bed obediently. Jojo, do you want some hot water? That night, Zohuan came to meet the two of them as scheduled. After a few words, Arbor summoned Qing Wan and had this dumbfounded little boy sit on it together. They headed towards Jiang Hong's private residence. When they arrived at Jiang Hong's residence, the large courtyard door was tightly locked. Arbor and Emolian brought Zohuan in through the back door. Under Zohuan's guidance, they directly went to the woodshed in the backyard. That woodshed door had 2 defensive restrictions added, but in Arbor's view, it was completely useless. Emolian stepped forward and struck out a spiritual fire, immediately shaking open the woodshed's restriction. The 3 of them kicked open the woodshed door and saw 6 or 7 young people around the age of 20 sitting against the wall. Zohuan. Chapter 2272. One of them involuntarily cried out in alarm when he saw the person who barged into the woodshed. Quickly get up and follow. Zohuan, you're here to save us, another person said agitatedly. These 2 are. Aya, don't ask so many questions first. Let's leave this place first. Someone's coming, Arbor said with a frown. The young man at the front named Zohuan involuntarily shuddered and took a step back. There are more than a dozen guards and retainers in this residence. Arbor glanced askance at that person. Aren't you talisman practitioners? Why do all of you look like cowards? That woman took away all the protective talismans on us. At the mention of this, the group of young men couldn't help but feel indignant. They were all tricked into making talismans for that woman. Every talisman they made was plundered by that greedy woman, Jiang Hong, and sold to talisman shops. You have so many level 13 and level 14 mystic cultivators. But why are you all like weak chickens without any resistance? Arbor swept them a glance. The young man who spoke first couldn't help but say indignantly, Who's a weak chicken? It's just that the enemy is strong and we're weak. The other party is a level 3 spiritual cultivator. So how can we be their match? Don't deny it when I say you're weak chickens. Arbor glanced at them irritably and said to Zohuan, If these little brothers of yours are all like this, then don't follow me. Sorry, her money didn't come from the wind, and she didn't raise weak-willed good-for-nothings. After saying that, she held Emolian's hand and walked out the door without looking back. Those young men couldn't help but feel a bit angry. They looked up at Zohuan and asked, Who is she, Zohuan? Aya Chihua, don't say anymore. Zohuan rushed out the door with her group of companions and saw more than a dozen guards surrounding them, shouting to kill. It doesn't matter if your cultivation isn't good. Remember that you're talisman practitioners, Arbor said coldly. The greatest effect of talisman practitioners is to use talismans to win and kill enemies. I have to make sure that I have talismans that I can use and draw at all times. If your hand speed isn't good, then practice. Don't dawdle all day long. You can't even draw a single talisman in an hour. Arbor narrowed his cold eyes and stared at the dozen or so servants rushing over. She waved her hand, and a dozen or so paper charms floated out. They looked like a butterfly with wings, and approached the group of servants with whooshing sounds. All the talismans were activated at the same time. Streams of light poured out from the talismans and rushed to the front of the group of servants. Immediately, they turned into circles of 8 trigrams and bound everyone. The circles of 8 trigrams talismans were like a spider web, tightly controlling each and every one of the servants within. Group bind. Zhou Huan, Qi Hua, and the others widened their eyes and stared at the great talisman master in front of them in disbelief. Was this really a binding talisman? How could the binding talisman be so powerful? Talisman masters aren't static. They can master all talismans through a comprehensive study. While immobilizing, you can also bind, stun, or do something else. Do you think a talisman can only be used for one purpose? Mine is a 8 trigrams binding talisman that combines the effects of immobilizing and binding. Arbor still felt that it wasn't enough to shock people. She said coldly, "No one taught me to draw like this. It's just that after drawing more and more, you'll know that everything is possible." This kind of mixed talisman was indeed something that she accidentally comprehended. Chapter 2273. Moreover, drawing mixed talismans on talisman paper was easy to fail. Because the material of the talisman paper was too light and thin, it could not bear the power of 2 kinds of talismans. Therefore, she was so eager to ask Emolian to get her 10,000 blank jade talismans. The talisman power in the jade talisman was naturally not the same as that of the talisman paper. The 8 trigrams binding talisman used by Arbor now was a combination of the effects of fixing and binding. It could be said to be the first talisman to transform it into the shape of the 8 trigrams. Qi Hua's face was full of excitement, his eyes fixed on the field, unable to turn away. Zhou Huan on the side was even more excited than him. She clenched her fists tightly and couldn't restrain the trembling of her body. There was a feeling of finding an organization in an instant. How to break it? In the past, it was not easy for him to find a basic talisman book when he fumbled about making talismans alone. It was very difficult for a talisman master like them, who did not belong to a talisman family, to learn and live. Talisman masters were passed down by word of mouth and passed down from generation to generation. Zhou Huan's father was also a talisman master, so she could learn a little from her father's generation. The difficulty of becoming a talisman master like Qi Hua and the others could be imagined. The little girl was too powerful. All the talisman masters present thought so in their hearts, and it was difficult to hide their excitement. If you want to learn from me, at least you must first learn to be tenacious and never shrink back. Arbor said coldly, and her eyes fell on Zhou Huan and the others. What are you waiting for? Go up and fight. Okay. Zhou Huan was the first to react. She rolled up her sleeves and rushed forward. Regardless of the weapon, she directly picked up a black brick from the side and smashed it on the head of a bound servant. Arbor's expression was slightly relaxed. If these guys didn't even have the courage to fight back against the people she had bound, then there was no need to follow her. This young man had no blood at all. What could he do with such a coward? I let you guys lock us up and bully us. I let you rob our talismans to sell. I let you help the evildoers. I'll beat you to death. 8 talisman masters swarmed up and beat more than a dozen servants until their heads were full of blood. One by one, they lay on the ground on the verge of death. Their bodies were still covered by the 8 trigrams binding talismans. It was as if their bodies were covered by the 8 trigrams diagram. They couldn't move at all. All they could do was worry helplessly. They couldn't even open their eyes. Arbor glanced at the crowd and flicked his hand, removing the 8 trigrams binding talismans from their bodies. The leading servant let out a loud roar and summoned a long sword from his conscience, accompanied by a tiger's roar. 1 man and 1 Xian beast charged towards Arbor, biting and slashing with all their might. Arbor didn't even look at them. He just said to the youths present, "Talisman masters don't need you to waste your energy fighting with others. As long as the right talisman was used at the right time, it would be fine. You can easily win. I don't understand what you people are thinking. 6 or 7 symbol masters have actually been bullied to this extent. As he spoke, a talisman appeared in front of Arbor. Defense talisman. Open. The big tiger that had rushed over crashed heavily into her defensive talisman circle with a loud bang. It howled and shook its big head. Arbor instantly applied a layer of Vajra talisman on his hand and stretched out an arm from the defensive talisman circle. A heavy punch landed on the big tiger's left eye that was close at hand. Ah! The stupid tiger let out a mournful roar. Chapter 2274. To everyone's annoyance, the tiger's head tilted back and drooled from the little fellow's punch, that string of drool drifted out with the wind. Huzi's expression was also very coquettish, and its furry face twisted. Everyone watched as the stupid tiger was punched out by the ferocious little girl. That was not the end of it. Everyone discovered with lingering fear. That tiger was punched out by the little girl, right? Unexpectedly, the little girl released an absorption talisman, and the force sucked the stupid tiger back to the defensive talisman circle. Another punch landed heavily on the stupid tiger's other eye. The same expression, the same drool, the same movement and the same speed. Everyone felt as if the scene just now was replayed, and they watched as the little girl punched the tiger in the eye, and punched it out again. Everyone silently lit a candle for the stupid tiger in their hearts and mourned in unison. Big brother, rest in peace. Woo 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 woo. Huzi squirmed with the tiger's head, and quickly fled the scene with its tail between its legs, not even caring about its owner. Everyone. Are you still a fucking tiger? You're not even as good as a cat. A talisman master only needs to draw talismans fast, cast talismans fast, have a flexible mind and change talismans fast. You can easily defeat the opponent in seconds. Arbor expressionlessly sent the leader of the guards who rushed in front of her with a sword flying. Of course, you don't have many types of talismans in your heads, so you won't know how to change talismans in battle. You just need to study hard in the future. Arbor used an 8 trigrams binding talisman on him again, causing him to fly out and crash into a tree in the backyard. He was completely confined to the tree, and his neck and mouth were crooked, unable to move at all. A talisman master should be an elegant profession. Xiao Mu withdrew the defensive barrier around her and glanced indifferently at the dumbfounded Zhou Huan and company. You can turn a city into ashes with a snap of your fingers, kill one person in 10 steps while joking, and kill 100 people in 100 steps. Isn't that right? If you want to learn from me, you have to listen to me in the future. If you can't bear the hardships and fatigue, you can get out now. Eldest Miss. Zhou Huan was the first to kneel on one knee in agitation. He cupped his hands towards the heavenly Tao and said, Zhou Huan is willing to follow Eldest Miss. Qi Hua is also willing to follow Eldest Miss to death. Fang Wenyao. Fang Wendong. Follow Eldest Miss. Arbor looked at them expressionlessly and nodded. Oh, if you want to follow me, everyone has to follow my rules. I only have one rule. Since we're teammates, we have to support each other in the future. Remember, don't stab each other in the back. I don't think any of you want to experience the way I treat traitors. Arbor said coldly. His voice was cold. Yes, we will follow Eldest Miss's orders. Arbor glanced at them and said, All right, get up. Go and tidy up the things in this private residence. Take away all the valuable things. Consider this your first bucket of gold in life. Don't be so stupid in the future. Don't count your money after being sold. You can't even protect your own talisman. Yes. Emolian's lips curved slightly. He stood behind Jojo and looked at her, his eyes full of pampering. The little fellow turned around and bounced to his side, muttering unhappily, I took a bath for nothing. It's hot again. Chapter 2275. Emolian could not help but laugh out loud. He hugged his little wife and whispered in her ear, It's all right. I'll wash it for you when we get back. A guy with evil intentions but no guts. Xiao Mu cast him a glance before proudly lifting her small chin. Then come. If you don't come, you're a puppy. Emolian was speechless. The little fellow was getting naughtier. She would tease him from time to time. He almost could not handle it. When I'm done forging your MOMO, we'll return to the divine continent immediately. Arbor wanted to laugh, but she said expressionlessly, Yes. Then you might as well go to Fish Orchid Planet to forge. Find a secluded place, and don't disturb the senior sister's cultivation. Emolian was stunned and then laughed. That's right. In that case, I don't need to be in such a hurry. I can also study it carefully, and see if I can improve the quality of this heavenly fire secret silver first. Who knows, we might be able to forge it into an 8th grade fire spirit before embedding it. The difference of 1 grade was thousands of miles. The little fellow's eyes lit up. Alright, you go forge. I'll go back to Shentian Prefecture. We'll split up. Emolian replied with a MHM. Don't forget to inform the Dunstock side. After the group finished ransacking Jiang Hong's house, they returned to their own little house. The sky was almost bright. Arbor let Zhou Huan, Qi Hua, and the rest for 4 hours. She had just settled them down when there was a series of knocks on the door. She opened the door and saw Dun Zhong leaning against the door. He wiped his sweat and panted. What's the matter? Why are you in such a hurry? Do you need to use the 800 miles express communication jade talisman to call nonstop? As he spoke, he walked into the court mindlessly. Is there tea? I'm dying of thirst. Arbor raised her little fist and gestured behind his head. He didn't know why, but when he saw that Gung Pingcheng's face, he wanted to beat him up. Emolian couldn't help but laugh and pull down her little hand. She turned around and glanced at Guan Zhaotang, who had followed her timidly. The moment his gaze fell on the door, he saw a black shadow flash from the corner of the wall. Emolian retracted his awe-inspiring gaze and revealed a mocking sneer. Arbor kicked the door open, took her husband's hand, and strode towards the stone table. You'll be in charge of the care hall from now on. Arbor glared at Dunzung when he saw Dunzung grabbing the kettle and drinking several cups of tea. Did you hear that? I heard it. Dun Zhulian nodded repeatedly and approached the two with a grin. Little master, then do I have to stay here for a while to sort out the affairs of an prefecture? Of course. Arbor rolled his eyes at him. We're leaving for Shentian Prefecture in the afternoon. When we pick up the little yellow crane, we'll set off for the Divine Continent. Ah, so fast, Dunzung said with a frown. Little master, are you going to be a hands-off shopkeeper? Arbor snorted and patted Dunzang's shoulder hard. She turned to look at Emolian and called, Husband. Emolian couldn't help but laugh. He knew that the little fellow didn't have the patience to talk to Dunju anymore. So he beckoned to Dunju. Come here, I have a few instructions for you. Keep this storage talisman well. Emolian handed him a blue talisman. You'll stay here in the future and look after the affairs of the 6 prefectures. All of you leave. Chapter 2276. Dunge's face fell. Are peony little Tai Sui and Shurchin all leaving? Emolian nodded and patted him on the shoulder. Thank you for your hard work. If I see a more suitable body in the Divine Land, I'll keep an eye out for you. Really? Dunge's face lit up with excitement. Of course. Emolian nodded. I'll leave the 6 prefectures' affairs to you. Although Guan Zhaotang is under Jojo's control now, there are many things. You still can't trust him too much. There's an antidote for Guan Zhaotang in the storage talisman I gave you. Just give him one every Lunar New Year. Keep him under your control, and use him for you. Emolian looked at him deeply. Do you understand? Yes, I understand. Dunja nodded. Select the elite disciples and train them. This matter must continue. Don't slack off. Okay. I'll train the Shentian guards well. Emolian gave him a few more instructions, then led him back to Arbor and Guan Zhaotang. When Guan Zhaotang saw Emolian, he felt a bit fearful and took 2 steps back. Alright, there's nothing else. You can leave. Dunja stood up and cupped his hands. Then we'll take our leave. Little master, I wish you a safe journey. Arbor nodded and looked coldly at Guan Zhaotang. If I find out that you're disloyal and unwilling to follow Prefectural Lord Gung's management, I'll punish you like this. Suddenly, a huge wave surged out from her palm. With a bang, it smashed a stone block beside the Hall of Caregiving's feet into pieces. The pieces fell to the ground and rolled down. Guan Zhaotang's heart skipped a beat. He turned and bowed to Arbor. I wouldn't dare, he replied, then quickly left with Dunja. Arbor looked coldly at his back. When Dunja takes over Ani Prefecture, Guanzhouting won't need to exist anymore, the little guy said coldly. I'm afraid it's not that easy. Emolian chuckled. Guanzhouting isn't a fool. He should be able to understand what you mean and take precautions. Humph. Arbor held her husband's hand. I can't be bothered. The 6 prefectures aren't my goal at all. She was going to the Divine Land. What she wanted to flatten was also the Divine Land. I wonder if those people who owe me, who have tried every means to stop me from setting foot on the Divine Land, are ready. Emolian chuckled softly. I'm guessing that they're ready. He had probably washed his neck clean and was waiting to be slaughtered. Jojo, go take a shower and rest for a while. I'll ask Little Tree to bring me to Fish Orchid Planet later. On the surface, Arbor nodded his little head, but he didn't let go of his waist. His pair of big eyes looked left and right at him, refusing to let go. The Crown Prince's heart almost melted from her gaze. He lowered his head and kissed her forehead. Jojo, look, I'm not going anywhere. I'm with you, he said gently. If you miss me, you'll be able to see me once you reach Fish Orchid Planet. Arbor thought that he was right. She nodded her little head hard and let go of his little hands. All right, go take a shower. Isn't it hot? Emolian smiled and rubbed her little head. Then, he hurried her back to her room. After her figure disappeared from his sight, his gentle and elegant expression gradually turned cold. His handsome face seemed to be covered with a layer of frost. Chapter 2277. Tong. Yes. Are you ready? Emolian asked coldly. Yes. Everything is ready. With a creak, the door of the small mansion was slammed open from the inside by a gust of air. Tong flew out with a group of people, and in a moment, he used arrows and spirit power to force out the people hiding in the corner. After those people appeared, they threw out several talismans under their sleeves. Inchi immediately approached. Emolian stood at the side and watched coldly. Tong rushed forward with a group of black-clothed youths. A large net filled with flickering electric currents appeared in his hands. Each of them held a corner of the net and covered the group of people along with the talismans they had cast, sealing them in the net. After a few bangs, several talismans flew out and exploded beside the talisman caster. A layer of black chi suddenly attacked the bodies of the people in the net, causing them to cry out and fall to the ground. Their bodies were covered in a layer of black cold death chi, and it was obvious that they couldn't live. Emolian raised a pair of cold eyes and coldly stared at the fleeing figure in the distance. With a wave of his hand, Tong led a group of agile youths and immediately chased after them. Emolian waved her hand again to seal the door of the mansion, and then her figure disappeared. When she appeared again, she was already 100 miles away, and her cold gaze fell on the thin black figure that was caught in the net by Tong and the others. Where do you think you're going? Emolian said coldly and raised her hand. The net that was wrapped around the person instantly flew up. When the thin man found that the net on his body was gone, he immediately wanted to run away. Unexpectedly, his whole body was controlled by a huge force, and he couldn't move at all, and stiffened on the spot. What are you doing? He angrily scolded. You're winning with numbers, it's an unfair victory. Emolian sneered, and withdrew the huge force on him, and a trace of ridicule appeared on her cold face. You don't accept it? Of course, I'm not convinced. You have the advantage in numbers, so it's not a big deal even if you win. The skinny man turned his head. His eyes were squeezed to the side of his nose. The distance between his eyes was very short, making his face look very strange. Emolian threw him a cold smile. With a wave of his hand, a mechanical puppet was released by him. With a bang, it fell to the ground, creating a small cloud of dust. If you beat me, I'll let you go. But if you lose, you have to obediently take us to see your master. The skinny man stared blankly for a moment. Then, he stared at the golem that had suddenly appeared with all his might. He muttered something under his breath, and a rune appeared between his fingers. He immediately threw it out. Bang! 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 A few Xianin talismans cracked beside the golem at the same time. However, the tragedy was that the Xianin talisman was completely useless against the golem. The golem was 3 times the size of the skinny man, With a stomp of its foot, a shallow pit appeared on the ground. Although the golem was tall, its agility was shocking. It leapt and jumped, and occasionally turned around to give a roundhouse kick. It heavily kicked the skinny man's stomach and sent him flying. Bang! The strange-looking man clutched the wound on his chest and struggled to stand up. He didn't have any intention to continue fighting and hurriedly turned around to escape. But just as his body moved, he heard a gust of wind above his head. Chapter 2278. When he raised his eyes to look, his eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. He saw that mechanical puppet called Number 1 descend from the sky and swiftly pressed down on his head. If this were to happen, even if he didn't die, he would lose half his life. The skinny man screamed and rolled on the ground to avoid the attack. Bam! The mechanical puppet landed heavily on the ground. When the sun shone on his black wood-carved face, it emitted a cold metallic light. It stretched out its arm and slapped towards his face. The skinny man quivered and hurriedly rolled one round on the ground. Only this time, he wasn't so lucky. The mechanical puppet's speed was actually very fast, and in a leap, it was already in front of him and lifted its leg to step on his left thigh. He clearly heard a crisp caw sound, and it was so painful that tears came out. Ah! You stop it. Ah! A malicious glint floated in the depths of his eyes, and he abruptly flung out 2 talismans from his sleeves. The talismans flew towards Emolien at an extremely tricky angle. Damn it! As long as he got rid of this man who was controlling the mechanical puppet, he would definitely be able to turn defeat into victory. Emolien coldly watched from the sidelines for a while, and seeing the 2 talismans flying towards him, he couldn't help but sneer in his heart. Just a little profound talisman, and he dared to display his slight skill in front of an expert. A pitch-black lotus seal appeared in front of him, and with a speed that surpassed the speed of light, it fiercely slapped down the 2 profound talismans. At the same time, a purple flame suddenly appeared and smashed into that person's chest. This flame's power was very terrifying, and it knocked him backwards and rolled twice. His head heavily hit the ground, and with a wah sound, blood spurted out from his mouth. If you don't speak, I will search your soul. Emolien, who had lost his patience, stretched out 5 slender fingers from his sleeves and was about to suck that man into his palm. The skinny man was the first to give in to the pressure and softened. Your Highness, please spare me. I will speak. I will tell you everything I know. Lead the way to your master. After a while, the skinny man pointed at an independent wooden house on the hillside not far away and screamed, It's there. Master's father? The entire house was burned down. Burn it. Emolien sneered and ordered Number 1, who was following closely beside her. Let's go and take a look. Golem 1 accepted the order and rushed into the burning hut on the hillside. However, a few minutes later, another earth-shattering sound came from the hillside. The entire house collapsed in the flames. Golem 1 was also covered in flames as he rushed over from the burning hill. He rolled all the way and rubbed himself against the tree bark. Useless thing. Emolien cursed with an icy expression. With a flip of his hand, a black flame shot out, completely absorbing all the flames on the golem's body. At this moment, the metal on the mechanical puppet's face seemed to have been melted by the flames, and there were streaks here and there. Emolien's cold gaze turned from its face to the skinny man who was trembling in fear. You dare to trick me? The skinny man's eyes narrowed and he hurriedly waved his hands and shouted with difficulty, No, no, no. My Master Chu really lives here. Hee. Emolien waved her hand and the skinny man flew over uncontrollably, his head landing in her palm. Chapter 2279. No, don't. Every word I said is the truth. I'm not lying. The man in front of him was truly terrifying. How could he dare to hide anything from him? No, don't search my soul. I can tell you everything I know, Your Highness. I, Master Chu, and I have been staying here for almost 7 days. Under my master's instructions, I have been carefully monitoring that Miss Chiao. He really didn't know whether this terrifying young master had known from the start that they were following him, or if he only found out now. Thinking about it, it was impossible for him to find out now. The small and skinny man shook his head in panic. I also know some things about Master. When Master was at Shention Prefecture, he schemed against that Miss Chiao. Emolian raised her brows slightly, indicating for him to continue. The small and skinny man hurriedly revealed everything he knew. Before the academy competition, Master found a few students from Hippo Academy and poisoned them with forbidden curses. Originally, he wanted them to kill Miss Chiao during the competition, but who would have thought that they would be saved instead? After that, Master sent a few people to investigate the situation, but none of them returned. So Master stopped for a long time, until you came to Ani Prefecture. Master then brought me to investigate, and waited for an opportunity to make a move. Your master is from Clear Sky Sect. He didn't expect that even after Clear Sky Sect had been eradicated, there were still remnants of evil that traveled thousands of miles to make trouble for his Jojo. The small and skinny man hurriedly shook his head and said, I don't know Master's specific identity, but everyone calls him Master Chu. His use of poison has reached perfection, and his forbidden talisman arts have already reached the black level perfection stage. Seeing Emolien's expression turn cold, the small and skinny man hurriedly shrieked, I am telling the truth. I really don't know Master's identity. I am just a little apprentice that's learning from him. Look, I'm not even that skilled in using talismans. Emolien sneered at him. One, kill him. After the order was given, the skinny man immediately realized that his neck had fallen into the golem's icy hand. He wanted to beg for mercy again, but the cold hand didn't give him the chance. Crack! His neck was broken by someone. Emolien's cold gaze fell on the golem. She reached out and put it away without saying a word. Tong raised his head to look at the crown prince, who was shrouded in a layer of pressure. He knelt on one knee and lowered his head. This subordinate was incompetent, and actually let that Master Chu escape. A black lotus flower ignited in Emolien's hand, and with a flick of his finger, that lotus-shaped black flame burned the petite man's corpse cleanly without leaving behind a trace of flesh or skin. Since someone wants to play, I'll accompany him to the end. What are you doing? What are you doing? A loud voice came from behind Tong's group. Emolien turned her head and looked coldly at the group of guards who were being escorted over. The leader had a square face, and his expression was very serious and old-fashioned. Kneel. Bam. The leader with the square face was kicked to the ground, and one of his knees landed heavily on the ground. What the fuck? The bodyguards beside him were also kicked to the ground one after another, and they started cursing. Chapter 2280. You're the captain of the forest guards, Fong Su? Emolien looked coldly at the person kneeling in front of her. Yes. Fong Su stiffened his neck and answered in a low voice. You're not convinced? Emolien glanced at him and waved her hand, releasing the two black-clothed youths holding him down. I'm not convinced, Fong Su said angrily and struggled to stand up. This subordinate is here on the Emperor's orders to ask your highness to return. Kneel. Tong kicked him again, but was stopped by Emolien. Who is this prince? Fong Su froze, then stiffened his neck and said, You're the Emperor's son, the crown prince of the divine province personally conferred by His Majesty. Who are you? This subordinate is the captain of the forest guards, Fong Su. A mere captain of the forest guards dares to disrespect your superior. Drag him away and give him 30 lashes before you talk. Two black-clothed youths walked out from beside Tong, and dragged Fong Su away to give him a beating without another word. Fong Su's subordinates immediately wilted when they saw this, shrinking back and not daring to say a word. Their captain had been dragged away by the crown prince for a beating, so if they didn't know their limits, they wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being beaten. A moment later, the blockhead who had suffered 30 lashes was dragged back by the two black-clothed youths and thrown in front of Emolien. Do you know why this prince wants to beat you? You don't like me. Tong's mouth twitched. Emolien couldn't help but snicker. Since you don't understand, then drag it on for another 30 lashes. Everyone. After another 30 lashes, even the thick-skinned blockhead felt that he couldn't take it anymore. The two black-clothed youths who beat him were also bad guys. Their subordinates were light as a feather, but when the lashes landed, There was blood under the skin and blood on the buttocks. They were clearly black-clothed goods who used hidden strength. Do you know why this prince wants to beat you now? Fong Su gritted his teeth and didn't say a word. You still don't understand? Then I'll give you another 30 lashes. Everyone! Exclamation point. Your Highness, you're so willful. Please, not everyone is as smart as you. Fong Su, this blockhead. How could he understand your meaning? Cough. A young man dressed in black walked out from Tong's side. He had a pale and handsome face, but his expression was somewhat lazy. He couldn't stand it anymore and said, Your Highness, if you continue beating him like this, even if you beat him 300 times, he might not understand what you mean. His IQ cough compared to yours. There's a huge gap. What a good bootlicker. Everyone applauded in their hearts. The Crown Prince's cold expression was clearly showing signs of easing up. Third Fu, when did you come back? Today. The lazy youth chuckled and walked to his side. He bowed and said, Your Highness, for such an honest person, it's better for us to get straight to the point so that he can understand. Fong Su straightened his neck and said loudly, His Highness the Crown Prince does not want to see Fong Su. The lazy young man couldn't help but raise his hand to support his forehead, and he glanced at Fong Su and said, Wrong, all wrong. It's not that His Highness doesn't like you. He doesn't like your master. Fong Su was stunned, and a trace of bewilderment appeared on his old-fashioned face. Big, Emperor? That's right. His Highness just doesn't like Emperor. You rascal. If you had changed the words I'm an eyesore to I'm an eyesore, His Highness might have been in a better mood and not hit you. Chapter 2281. You don't like the Emperor? Fong Su's mouth dropped open in shock. Even the Lu Lin guards behind him couldn't bear to look at his foolish expression. Fong Su. Mo Lien raised his hand, and the two black-clothed youths who had been pressing down on Fong Su's shoulders retracted their hands and released him. Fong Su hurriedly lowered his head and asked in a deep voice, Fong Su is only here on orders and can't invite your Highness back. Fong Su can only return to report to the Emperor and ask the Emperor to send. Shut up. A cold light flashed through Mo Lien's eyes. Fu San suddenly pressed down his raised hand. Your Highness. Fu San shook his head at him, stopping his sudden murderous intent. Mo Lien's expression turned cold as he stopped his hand and casually swept a glance over Fong Su. Go back and tell your master that this Crown Prince will return within 10 days. Fong Su's stern and old-fashioned face suddenly revealed a trace of pleasant surprise. He even suspected that he was going to fail this mission. He didn't expect that there would be a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. Since the Crown Prince personally made a promise, then he would naturally do as he said. Fong Su hurriedly bowed his head respectfully. Yes, this subordinate will return to report to His Highness. Also, tell him to bring back all those random women that were stuffed into the Eastern Palace. Let them go back to wherever they came from. Otherwise, this Crown Prince doesn't mind adding a few corpses to the civil and military officials' houses to celebrate. Fong Su. His Highness the Crown Prince actually knew? Looking at His Highness the Crown Prince's appearance, he seemed to dislike those women in the Eastern Palace. Kiki was one of those women. It was specially selected by Madame Goen. Don't wait until the situation is out of control before you regret it. Mo Lien glared at Fong Su warningly. This Crown Prince will leave my words here today. If you return and find that there is a random woman in my Eastern Palace, kill one. If there are two, kill a pair. His expression was cold as he said, If you don't bring them back first, then wait to collect their corpses. Also, tell that old woman from Goen to stop. If I find out what kind of trouble she's up to again, don't blame me for not leaving her any face. Don't think that this old man can protect her. If I were to go crazy, even I would be afraid. Scram! The more she spoke, the angrier she became. Mo Lien's cold voice turned into an explosive shout. A gust of wind landed on Fong Su's body, instantly pushing him back a few steps. The group of Greenwood guards retreated in silence, not daring to provoke this temperamental Crown Prince again. This Crown Prince looked really scary. What should he do? Mo Lien bent his long fingers slightly and turned around to see Fu San shaking his head at him. Only then did he manage to suppress his murderous intent. Damned old man. Emolian coldly cursed. When he returned, if they still let his wife be wronged, he would kill them all for peace and quiet. Third Fu couldn't help but sigh. He knew that the knot between this fellow and his father was difficult to untie, so he could only change the topic. Your Highness, then should we immediately pack up and leave? Emolian nodded. You all go back first. At the same time, Miss Chiao, who had washed up and smelled good, laid back down on the bed. She hugged the quilt and rolled over, happily catching up on sleep. A night of torment had been very tiring. Jojo had planned to have a good sleep first, but the moment she closed her eyes, the entire golden talisman jade tome turned into rays of golden light, flashing in front of her eyes. Chapter 2282. What was this golden talisman jade tome up to again? It suddenly became excited, and shook her so much that she felt dizzy. Arbor wanted to sit up, but she found that she couldn't even lift a finger. The golden talisman jade tome was up to something again. Arbor helplessly lay on the bed, and used a wisp of her spiritual sense, to control her spiritual sense, to enter the depths of her conscious to investigate. She saw that one of the 12 jade slips flew out, and transformed into a large golden book, that was overflowing with light. Miss Chiao's heart stirred, and she rushed forward with a cheer. She originally thought that the golden talisman jade tome had advanced her level again, and she could now learn earth-grade talismans that unexpectedly. The jade slip that flew out was still the original 8th one. Arbor couldn't help but roll her eyes inwardly. She had already browsed through this 8th jade slip several times from beginning to end and memorized every single word. Why was it still flying out and forcing her to flip through it? Could it be that after her proficiency in talismans increased, she unlocked some hidden talismans to learn? Arbor suspiciously controlled her spiritual sense, and made it climb onto the book to examine it. This little spiritual sense body was about 7 inches tall. It stood on the book with its hands on its hips and stomped back and forth in a circle. Suddenly, it flicked its finger, and a series of trembling golden characters leaped into the air before her eyes, forming 3 large characters. Flying Talisman. Black-grade Talisman. Flying Talisman. Effect, assists in flight. Duration 1 hour. There was even a series of small characters below. The Flying Talisman is the only type of black-grade talisman that doesn't require mystic energy or spiritual energy to be activated. With the Flying Talisman in hand, flying is no longer a dream for ordinary people. Do you want to soar in the sky? Do you want to have a pair of invisible wings? Use them to make the Flying Talisman. Arbor was speechless. She didn't expect the golden talisman jade tome to have such a funny side. Are you sure you're not teasing me with those few lines of words? Arbor controlled her spiritual sense body to sit cross-legged on the golden book. She picked up the gold-beaded talisman pen and drew the flying talisman over and over again. Almost an hour passed. The golden book slowly turned into golden powder and folded back into the shape of a jade slip. Arbor calmly opened her eyes. With a slight movement of her fingers, a flying talisman appeared in her palm. Now that she was a perfected black-grade talisman master, her talisman drawing speed had increased slightly. With a single thought, the little fellow appeared on the fish orchid star. Sensing Emolian's location, Miss Chiao's figure flashed, and she immediately appeared beside him. Taking a closer look, the crown prince was sitting in a secluded corner of the beach with his eyes closed. A small bronze cauldron floated in front of him. It floated in the air, guided by an air current. The man's features were exquisite, and his long hair danced in the wind. Even with his eyes closed, his handsomeness could not be concealed. Miss Chiao ran a circle around her husband, and reached out to touch the boundary formed by the faint black flames in front of him. His finger was immediately sucked in by a wisp of black fire, touching his slightly cold face. The little fellow retracted her hand, as if she had a guilty conscience. She stole a glance at him. Seeing that he had no reaction, she reached out to support her chin and squatted down in front of him. She stared at him in a daze for a long time through the faint barrier of fire. Was the sacred flame so cold? Miss Chiao blinked her eyes. She simply stuck her head out and crawled into the boundary of fire. When she got close to him, her heart inexplicably fluttered. So beautiful. The little fellow's eyes curved slightly, and she couldn't help but leave a watermark on his thin lips. Chapter 2283. In the future, no matter how busy she was, she would visit him every day and give him a kiss. Miss Chiao made the decision happily. Then, she no longer disturbed him, and quietly disappeared from Fish Orchid Planet. After an unknown amount of time had passed, a small crab emerged from the beach and ran toward where Emolien was sitting while brandishing a pair of pincers. However, when it was 10 steps away from the sacred flame, it felt the terrifying heat and was about to turn and run away. There was a soft sizzling sound. This pitiful little crab that didn't have eyes was instantly vaporized by the steam. The fine white sand beneath Emolien's feet pushed outwards in layers before turning into wisps of white smoke and disappearing into the air. The sacred flame was the most young fire in the world. It had always been known to burn all evil and filthy things in the world. As long as the sacred flame did not want to, no living thing could get close to it. When Xiao Mu found her second ant master at the market, she was in the middle of haggling with someone until her face was flushed red. In the end, she bought a card of cloth that looked quite good at a very discounted price. Arbor was speechless. "Martial ant, why did you buy so much firewood, rice oil, salt, and cloth?" Jojo had all of these. "Child, you don't know how expensive firewood is until you're in charge. Let me tell you, we have a lot of people, and your senior sister has 200 people. When we go to the divine continent, where people are eaten without spitting out the bones, if we don't save up first, we might not even have enough money to buy clothes. I've heard about it a long time ago. In the divine prefecture, ordinary goods are extremely expensive. It's said that spirit coins are only low-end currencies. That was something that needed to be circulated with spirit stones. Spirit stones. If everyone had spirit stones, they would have used them for their own cultivation. Why would they use them as currency?" Yang Shirong chattered nonstop as she followed the man pushing the cart. Xiao Mu followed behind her with her small paws behind her back, imitating her every step of the way. Looking at his second martial ant who was walking in front of him and chattering nonstop, he felt that the beautiful days of the past seemed to have come back. Yes. Second martial uncle is the most meticulous. That's right. Spiritual stones are not the most high-end currency. Let me tell you, I've heard that some rich people in the divine land will pay immortal stones or crystal cores of spirit beasts above LV14 to buy elixirs, talismans, magic weapons, and other luxuries at sky-high prices. Oh my god, isn't this digging meat? Second martial uncle grumbled. Arbor jumped and followed closely behind second uncle master. Yang Shirong turned around and looked at her with a grin. She quietly reached out to grab her little hand and mumbled, "Second martial ant wants to save money for your dowry. Think about it. You can buy a batch of materials here at a low price and sell them in Shenzhou. Aren't we rich now?" Arbor's eyebrows slightly curved as he nodded his little head repeatedly. "Second uncle master, as long as you're happy." Eldest miss. When the carriage arrived at the entrance of the mansion, 8 young men rushed out. Yang Shirong subconsciously pulled Arbor's hand and took a step back. "Who are you? Why are you in our house? Come and greet my second martial uncle, Peak Master Yang." Arbor waved at the 8 people. "Disciple Zhuan, Qihua, greetings to Peak Master Yang," they said in unison. Yang Shirong paced around the young men and nodded with a serious expression. Chapter 2284. So you're saying that these guys are talisman masters? Second Uncle Master Yang Shirong sized up the 8 lads with a judgmental gaze and nodded. "You want to bring them to the divine continent together? But their cultivation is a little low." The lads who were disdained by Second Uncle Master hurriedly said, We will work hard. Yes, we will definitely not disappoint eldest Mississippi," Yang Shirong grunted. "But speaking of which, the most important thing for a talisman master is to be able to draw talismans. Since Jojo is willing to take you in, it means that your talisman crafting aptitude should be pretty good. If you assist Jojo well in the future, you will definitely have a bright and prosperous future." "Yes." The group of lads nodded excitedly. "Uncle Master." Arbor gently tugged at her sleeve. "Put these things away first. After eating, we will return to Shuntian Prefecture. Second Uncle Master was really too much. She could clearly put these things into her inner world, but she had to make people transport them all the way back in a carriage. Put. Yang Shirong directed the group of lads to move the things into the house. After closing the door, she beamed with joy and leaned over to her little niece and whispered in her ear, "Put these supplies into Taoyuan." Second Uncle Master. Arbor looked at her helplessly. Why would she need these supplies? Couldn't Second Uncle Master keep them for herself? Yang Shirong glanced at her. "Don't talk nonsense. Uncle Master bought them for you. Put them away quickly. You still have so many senior sisters to take care of. How can Uncle Master not put in some effort?" Arbor waved her hand helplessly and put all the things into Taoyuan's warehouse. She turned to look at Zhou Huan and the rest. "What do you want to eat?" Zhou Huan and the rest couldn't help but look at each other. Could they eat whatever they wanted to eat? He still wanted to eat red braised pork. He hadn't eaten it for several months. "Aya, the sesame oil chicken we ate last time was pretty good." Yang Shirong followed behind Arbor and laughed noisily. "Also a plate of crispy peanuts, a plate of mapo tofu. Ha ha ha. With a pot of viburnum wine. My God. It's simply your Uncle Master's favorite." All right. Arbor said in a low voice. "Uncle Master, you've been eating a lot of heavy food lately. How about some light vegetables?" "I don't eat vegetables. Your martial uncle is not an insect." "I must eat it. Unfilial brat." Zhou Huan and the others looked at each other in shock. They could see the astonishment in each other's eyes. When they turned around, they saw Miss Chiao poking her head out of the reception pavilion and waving at them. "What are you all standing there for? Come in and eat. How about red braised meat? Or don't a pig knuckle?" Everyone was speechless. Wasn't it too sumptuous? He didn't expect to be able to eat such a sumptuous lunch. Arbor looked at Zhou Huan and the others who were eating and crying silently. How strange. Why was she of the same breed as Qi Xianxian and the others? She was so happy that she cried during her first meal. Second Uncle Master did not know how to drink. After drinking 3 pots in a row, he passed out as expected. Arbor had no choice but to let Sapling move her into Taoyuan. Only then did he say to everyone, "Go out and wait for me." "All right." Arbor closed the door and quickly took a shower and changed into clean clothes. Just as he finished changing, a white thing crawled in through the window. The little white snake flicked its tail and slithered to her side. It raised its little snake head and looked up at her. "Master." Chapter 2285. Master. Nonsense. Arbor adjusted her belt in annoyance and hung a small purple gold sachet on it. She turned around and hung down her delicate and fair hand, allowing the little snake to jump onto her wrist. "Master, what's wrong with you these 2 days? You have to take 3 baths a day." Because Master had to throw it out of the window every time she took a bath, the little snake felt that it was very busy and was always thrown out. "Master, I won't peek. Can you not throw me out of the window?" Arbor rolled her eyes and opened the door. She stroked the little snake's head. "I'm saving your life." The little snake twisted its body and curled up. The golden crown on its head also drooped very comically, revealing the word Jiao on its forehead. Xiao Mu's fingers involuntarily stroked the summon character on its forehead. The little white snake's cute eyes stared straight at her. It was bubbling with happiness and rolled around her wrist. Master, can you not take a bath? You throw me out every time you take a bath. I'm not happy. Rather than throwing me out of the window, I think it's better that Master doesn't take a bath." Arbor, that she couldn't be bothered to talk to this little stupid snake. If she hadn't obediently thrown it out of the window every time, it wouldn't still be alive right now. Oh no, it would still be alive. It would have been killed by Emolien. Arbor pulled open the door to the room. In the winter afternoon, the sun shone on her, and a faint warm breeze brushed past her face. Her slightly damp long hair was blown back. 8 young people were standing in the courtyard, ready to go. When they turned around, they saw this little girl in plain clothes. She had one hand on the door frame, and the other hand was slightly raised to block the glaring sunlight. It was this scene that was deeply engraved in the hearts of the young people. Many years later, they were already in high positions. When others asked, they wouldn't hesitate to say in unison with a face full of pride. On a cold winter afternoon, in an inconspicuous little courtyard, we made the most correct decision. They would follow their little master to the divine land without hesitation. At this time, these 8 young people did not know that their fates had already quietly undergone an earth-shaking change. Outside Taiji Palace in Songzhou, Phoenix Emperor City Duanyu, who was draped in a white mink cloak, stood indifferently beside the carriage with his sleeves rolled up. Yuan Zhen was currently directing everyone to move the necessary low tables, refreshments, and other items onto the carriage that was hung with thick curtains. He turned around and quickly walked to Duanyu's side. He saluted and said, "Your Highness, you can board the carriage now. We must reach Fengyuan Gate within 2 hours and meet up with the Crown Prince and the others." Every year, the Zhangzhou Emperor would expend a lot of manpower and resources to prepare for his winter hunt. It took 3 months for the palace to prepare, escort the great emperor out, and finally successfully return to the palace. They would probably stay in the Ice Heaven Snow region for 1.5 months. The Taiji Palace alone had prepared for Prince Chen's trip for half a month, and all the people in the palace had been mobilized. Duanyu tugged at the cloak that had slipped off his shoulders with waning interest. He lightly leaped onto the carriage and squeezed through the thick curtains. "Shadow, Your Highness!" A pitch-black figure silently appeared beside the chariot. Chapter 2286. Harness the wolves, so that they can pull the carriage more steadily. "Yes, Your Highness." Everyone stared dumbfoundedly at the 3 black wolves the size of calves baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Using these to pull the carriage? Duanyu crawled out of the carriage and reached out to stroke the black, shiny fur of one of the wolves. He said with a grin, "Drive the carriage properly. If you bump into this prince, be careful of your own skin." The 3 drooping wolves shuddered at his words and quickly pulled themselves together in high spirits. "Such frightening humans." Your Highness," Yuan Jin stammered. "Why, you're really going to Fengyuan Gate like this?" "Why not?" Duanyu knitted his brows. "Aren't we going to hunt spirit beasts? If you're afraid of even 3 puny wolves, then you might as well stay at home and continue being a prince." Yuan Zhen exchanged glances with the old nanny beside him and sighed. His Highness was going to stir up trouble. Duanyu sat back down in the carriage, and his icy voice traveled through the thick curtains. "Set off. Rumble." Rumbled the carriage's wheels made muffled sounds under the morning sun. Aside from this, there was only the sound of a group of people silently following behind the carriage and stepping on the thick snow. The people around Prince Chun were having a mental breakdown at this time. His Highness was completely stirring up trouble. Who knew if it would cause a panic when they arrived at Fengyuan Gate later? Minor General Arua of the Mid-Guardian Guard reporting. An exuberant voice welcomed the morning light and rang in everyone's ears. "Your Highness, Arua will be fully responsible for your Highness's safety during this winter hunt. Stay away from me." The icy cold voice immediately caused the little soldier called Arua to be stunned. The happy expression on his face instantly turned into a blank. "You smell of cosmetics," Duanyu remarked disdainfully. That minor soldier called Arua's expression stiffened, and he hastily raised the sleeve of his black armor to sniff it again and again. Where did this cosmetics smell come from? Don't think that this prince can't do anything to you just because you're left Prime Minister Wu Yong's subordinate. You've taken the opportunity to get close to me again and again. If there's a next time, this prince will take your dog life. Soldier Arua's face fell. He hurriedly followed the carriage and shouted, "Your Highness, when did you recognize me?" Duanyu was silent. Arua ran 2 steps after him and hurriedly shouted, "Arua doesn't think she's exposed any flaws. Throw it out." "Yes, master." Ing appeared beside Wu Ruomei, lifted her up, and threw her out without any explanation. Duanyu only felt that his ears were much more tranquil, and his mood also improved slightly. He had already recognized this idiot when she disguised herself as a man and followed her father, Wu Yong, outside the Imperial Ancestral Temple. "Are you sure you're not here to make a fool of yourself?" Wu Ruomei, who had been thrown out, was hanging from the top of the wall. She finally managed to flip herself over and sit on the wall. She hastily waved her hand at Duan Yu's carriage that was leaving in the distance. Your Highness! Your Highness! I really received the order and accepted the mission to protect you. His Highness doesn't need a woman to protect him. So what if I'm a woman? Wu Ruomei flipped down from the top of the wall in anger and chased after the eunuch Xiao Kezi, shouting, If you have the guts, why don't you compete with a woman? Xiao Kezi immediately shrank back behind Yuan Zhen. What a joke. You want him, a weak normal person, to fight with eldest Miss Wu. Chapter 2287. Your Highness, I really have a mission token here. When Wu Ruomei was fishing for something under her robe, she heard a gust of wind. Caught off guard, she was kicked off the wall by Ying again and hung on it. She was so angry that her face flushed red. She pounded the wall and cursed in embarrassment. Don't kick me if you have the guts. Duan Yu's carriage arrived at Feng Yuan's gate in less than half an hour. At this time, the carriages parked by the side had already formed a long line. For this winter hunt, the emperor not only brought a group of favored imperial concubines and princes and grandsons, but also many outstanding young men and women from civil and military officials, aristocratic families, and sections. Left Prime Minister Wu Yong was looking for his troublesome daughter in the crowd. When he looked up and saw Prince Chen's carriage coming over, he quickly dismounted to welcome him. Seeing Prime Minister Wu like this, everyone also hurriedly dismounted and bowed to welcome Prince Chen. Prince Chen, who had just returned, was not to be underestimated. It was not an exaggeration to say that he soared to the sky in a single bound and made people look at him in a new light. For so many years, no one had inherited the Fiend Emperor's bloodline, but he actually inherited it. It had to be said that this prince's luck was truly heaven-defying. Ah! A woman's scream suddenly came from the crowd. It was unknown which family's young miss was frightened by the three ferocious hyenas, but she failed to live up to expectations and fainted as soon as she closed her eyes. This caused a bit of chaos among the servants of that family. Some pinched her philtrum, and some gave her medicine. A cold snort came from behind the thick carriage curtain. Sangzhou's Li family is known as one of the three great patrician families of Phoenix Emperor City. Their daughter was actually frightened by a mystic beast. Truly an eye-opener for this prince. Lo! Shameful laughter involuntarily came from the crowd. A steward of the Li family argued with a flushed face. This naturally isn't it. How could he say that this fainted woman was merely an ordinary concubine's daughter in their family? A concubine's daughter with a bit of beauty like this was usually offered to some aristocratic family as a bed warmer. Naturally, she was not a girl with outstanding talent that the family focused on nurturing. For this winter hunt, His Majesty was the one leading the expedition. The Li family had brought along this beautiful concubine's daughter in order to climb up the social ladder. It would be best if it was a royal relative, but he didn't expect that he would be so unpresentable. Before it set off, it was frightened by Prince Chen's hunting wolf and fainted. This was truly a disgrace to the clan. Fourth younger brother. A piercing laugh came from the side. Miss Li is delicate. Why do you have to be so harsh on her? Although this flying wolf is only a low-level Xian beast, it still scared the young lady in the end. The crown prince, the second prince, and the third prince disembarked from their carriages. Beside them was a young man with an elegant and cold appearance. Duan Yu glanced at that person and recognized him as Prince Qing's heir, Rong Qing. Duan Yu also disembarked from the carriage and cupped his hands toward the crown prince without much sincerity. Elder brother, I think that since royal father has decreed for the winter hunt, we should select some people with passable cultivation to accompany us. I have no interest in participating in the hunt with a bunch of repulsive people. If all of you are as weak as this, then this king will return home. Duan Yu's disinterested expression made everyone's mouths twitch. Crown Prince Rongli quickly called out to him. Fourth younger brother. His Majesty the Emperor has arrived. Her Majesty the Empress has arrived. Noble Consort Duan has arrived. Chapter 2288. Sangzhou's great emperor, Rong Yuan, saw his restless fourth son as soon as he got off the carriage. This child was wearing a pure white cloak. He was tall and handsome, like a bamboo tree in the cold wind. He looked at them coldly. He was leaning against a huge flying wolf. His slender fingers twirled the fluffy fur on the flying wolf's head. His peach blossom eyes, which were supposed to be affectionate, were now filled with ruthlessness. He looked at the people in front of him without any warmth. It was as if the clamor in front of him had nothing to do with him. The people standing in front of him were not his brothers and relatives, but a group of fake people. Ah ha ha ha! Awkward laughter came from the crowd. A thin middle-aged man appeared behind Rong Yuan, and said with a smile, "Fourth Prince, you must be anxious from waiting. Your Majesty, most of the people should be here. Please give the order to set off." Songzhou's great emperor. "That you useless guy, you only know how to change your mind." The great emperor glared at this official. Everyone was whispering to each other in private. And Xinghe was blind. Didn't he see that beside the fourth prince, there were 3 terrifying flying wolves driving the carriage? These big guys mixed in with the horse caravan. Wouldn't the horses be scared to the point that they wouldn't run away? This in Xinghe was used to smoothing things over, and always liked to talk things over. "Why aren't you carrying this useless slut away? She'll dirty His Highness's eyes." A red-clothed beauty walked out from Xinghe's side, and arrogantly kicked the Li family's concubine's daughter on the ground. She coldly looked at the palace servants behind her. There was another round of whispers in the crowd. Everyone recognized that this red-clothed beauty with exquisite makeup and a pearl hairpin was the famous high-grade alchemist Xiangchang princess. Although this princess was young, her attainments in alchemy were not small. She was only 20 years old, and would soon become a popular yellow-grade alchemist. In their Songzhou, yellow-grade alchemists were not rare. What was rare was such a young quasi-yellow-grade alchemist. Those who could become yellow-grade alchemists were mostly old fellows in their 70s or 80s. However, this Xiangchang region princess had joined the Orthodox alchemy sect at a young age. Due to her exceptional talent, she had become the medicine sect's head elder's favorite direct disciple. Her status was definitely not to be underestimated. Rong Yuan waved his hand and signaled for the servants to carry the Li family's young mistress out. The head of the Li family, Li Yuanxian, narrowed his old eyes and took a few steps forward awkwardly. He hurriedly bowed and said, "My daughter has just returned home from the mountains and countryside. She didn't know how to behave properly in front of the palace. I hope your Majesty and the concubines will be magnanimous enough to forgive her." "Master Li, don't bring such an unpresentable daughter of a concubine around with you all the time. She's just a little pretty. Patriarch Li, you're quite scheming." The few patriarchs who were not on good terms with Li Yuanxian naturally seized the opportunity to unceremoniously ridicule him. Their words caused the veins on Li Yuanxian's forehead to bulge. "Father." Duan Yu impatiently interrupted everyone's ridicule and expressionlessly said, "I heard that there's a competition every time there's a hunt. If the people who hunt are all weaklings like this, then this subject won't participate. Even if I win, it's an unfair victory." The emperor of Songzhou's eyelids twitched. His son was his son, but his temper was unknown who he took after. His mother, noble consort Duan, was such a gentle woman. Chapter 2289. Noble consort Duan walked to her son's side and helplessly wiped away the fine white snow at his temples with her sleeve. She gazed at her child with gentle eyes and said softly, "Son, it's fine for you to be cooped up in the palace all the time. Why don't you go out for a walk? Who knows, you might even encounter some interesting things." Duan Yu's icy gaze finally softened. He looked down at his mother and nodded reluctantly. "Then I won't compete with them." Okay, as you wish." Her Majesty the Empress, who was dressed in a formal robe trimmed with black brocade, had a glint in her eyes when she heard this. She stroked her face with her sleeve and said with a smile, "Your Majesty, look, the fourth prince has already spoken. No matter what, you have to choose some young talents for him. When we reach the ice heavens and snow region, they must accompany the fourth prince to have some fun. The crown prince's health has been weak these past few days. Otherwise, he could accompany his younger brother to hunt." The second and third princes silently followed behind Crown Prince Rongli, but their eyelids twitched tightly. "Please." Old Fourth had a sacred beast, the seven-tailed heavenly fox, by his side. Who freaking wanted to play with him? Whoever dared to compete with him would definitely be dealt a heavy blow. Only those who were unlucky would play with him. Sangzhou's emperor muttered to himself for a moment before turning his gaze to his second and third sons, who had their heads bowed. Old second, old third. A royal father? Why Weichen's waist hasn't been well recently? The second prince hastily stammered. Why Weichen's eye disease has flared up, royal father. Sangzhou's emperor was amused by his two cowardly sons. One's waist isn't well, and the other's legs aren't well. Then stay in Phoenix Emperor City and don't go hunting. The second and third princes looked at each other in dismay. Fuck, how could they not go? The list of names for the winter hunt each time represented royal father's favor. Which of the people who could go with the emperor to the winter hunt weren't young patrician sons or royal relatives favored by the emperor? Your Majesty, this humble subject is here. Prince Qing's heir, who was called, leaped off his horse and bowed to the emperor. Do you have the confidence to compete with our son? Your Majesty's orders, this humble subject does not dare to refuse. The great emperor looked at his young and outstanding nephew, and his mood improved slightly. He laughed and said, Ali, when you go to the heavenly ice and snow region, you will have opponents. Qing's hunting skills will definitely broaden your horizons. Duan Yu leisurely glanced at the silent vassal Prince Rong, who was standing solemnly with his head bowed. Then, he lifted the curtain and leaped into the carriage. Let's set off. The great emperor looked helplessly at his son's carriage and raised his hand. Let's go. Aya. His Majesty seems to favor the fourth prince a lot. Nonsense. That is the Rong family's only glory in the last 1,000 years. They inherited the demon emperor's bloodline. Speaking of which, after receiving the devil emperor's inheritance, will my cultivation soar by leaps and bounds? I wonder what cultivation level this fourth highness is at now. I think it's better not to ask. If you ask, you'll suffer a blow for no reason. Previously, in our Phoenix Emperor City, the crown prince was knowledgeable and elegant. Although he couldn't compare to Prince Qing's heir, who was proficient in both the pen and the sword, he was still an elegant young master. But now, his limelight has been completely overshadowed by this fourth brother of his. Eldest brother, don't listen to those gossips. The second prince frowned and swept his gaze behind him. Because there were so many people, they didn't know who was speaking, but some fragmented words drifted into their ears. Chapter 2290. Although Rongli didn't say anything on the surface, his hands were tightly gripping the reins. A vein popped out on the back of his hand. Ever since his fourth brother returned home, he felt that his position in front of his imperial father had plummeted. In his imperial father's words, it seemed that he only cared about his fourth brother. How much was he, the crown prince, being squeezed to? How hateful. Looking at that arrogant and domineering young and handsome face, he really wanted to destroy it with his own hands. The caravan headed towards the ferry. When they arrived at the ferry, they would change boats and head straight for the extremely cold ice heaven snow region. This journey would take about 10 to 15 days. Crown Prince Rongli tightly gripped the reins and suppressed his gloomy mood. Underworld Province, Great Yong City Imperial Palace. Ahahaha. Your Highness. A few personal palace servants looked at the black-clothed man standing in the open main hall, laughing maniacally with a distorted face. They couldn't bear to look at him and shrank to the side. His Highness the Crown Prince wouldn't be crazy, right? Ha 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 ha. Underworld Wolf Prince laughed until tears were about to fall. Look, Mr. Zhuang, you heard it today. Ha 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 ha. My good imperial father actually personally asked me to give up the position of Crown Prince. Give it to my good third brother. Ha 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 ha. I knew it. Nothing good would come out of bringing him back. Underworld Wolf Prince gritted his teeth and cursed. Ha 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 ha. Look, this is my father, my most revered father. For the son of a favored concubine, he wants to abolish me. Ha 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 ha. Crown Prince, your Highness, please calm down. The old man in his early 50s that Underworld Wolf Prince called Mr. Zhuang stroked his beard and sighed. The imperial noble consort is deeply favored by the emperor. This is an unchangeable fact. Mr. Zhuang said. The top priority is to unite the civil and military officials and suppress this matter. We will think of a countermeasure to deal with it, And then? Suppress it and then what? Won't you still have to give up the position? Ha ha ha. Underworld Wolf Prince's face was full of despair as he slumped into the armchair. Teacher, the situation is gone. It can't be salvaged. No. This matter can be salvaged. Mr. Zhuang calmly analyzed. What His Highness has done in the past 3 years is obvious to all in and out of the court. Your Highness, you can't give up so easily. Listen to this old subject. You only need to do one thing during this period of time, and that is to visit all the court officials. Is it useful? Your Highness, if you don't do it, you'll have nothing. If you try your best, you might be able to turn the tide. The Underworld Wolf Crown Prince slumped on the stool without spirit. Suddenly, he covered his face and wept bitterly. Father said that third brother is very outstanding. Whether it is intelligence, strategy, or even cultivation, third brother is the most outstanding among all his sons. So what? Mr. Zhuang flung his sleeves and said, how can we allow him to occupy the position of Crown Prince without a proper title? Your Highness, pull yourself together. You are the legitimate son of the late Empress. For the past 3 years, you have been helping the great Emperor deal with government affairs. You have been doing an excellent job. Yes. The Underworld Wolf Crown Prince propped himself up and clenched his fists tightly as he angrily said, I am the most legitimate Crown Prince. That son of a favored concubine. How can he compete with me? I won't lose. I won't lose. Your Highness. Your Highness. The Crown Princess' voice came from outside the door. Chapter 2291. Fuer, why are you here? Underworld Wolf Crown Prince hastily stood up and opened the door to welcome his pot-bellied wife in. Fuer, your body is heavy, so don't walk around in the cold of the night. Your Highness, I'm worried about you. Su Fu pulled her husband's hand and sat down at the table together. I know about what happened in the Imperial study this afternoon. Your Highness, you mustn't misunderstand. As long as we're here, we'll have Qingshan. Before you do anything, think about Fu and our unborn child. Yes. Underworld Wolf Crown Prince held his wife's shoulders and nodded. Fu, don't worry. I won't fall so easily. Sir Zhuang nodded, gratified. This old official will contact some people. For the next few days, Your Highness and Her Highness the Crown Princess can stay in Qingyuan Hall. Thank you for your trouble, Sir Zhuang. I await your good news. Sir Zhuang nodded. Just as he walked out of Qingyuan Hall's door, someone pressed a shiny dagger against his neck. His old face turned pale as he retreated step by step into the hall. Good news? What good news do you think there can be? A cold voice sounded in Underworld Wolf Crown Prince's ears. It shuttled back and forth in the empty hall. The palace maids and eunuchs guarding the door had long since knelt down, trembling in fear. Their heads were pressed against the back of their hands, and they didn't dare to move a single hair. Underworld Wolf, I originally didn't want to bicker with you. Unfortunately, you don't know how to be tactful, and don't know when to advance or retreat. Outside the tall hall door, a slender figure crossed the threshold and coldly gazed at Sir Zhuang, who had a dagger against his neck. Third Prince Yu? What are you doing? Sir Zhuang felt like a scholar meeting a soldier, unable to reason clearly. He was now a fish on the chopping board. Although he forced himself to be calm, it was inevitable that he was panicking. The pitiful Sir Zhuang had an eloquent tongue, but he couldn't say anything in this situation. Eldest brother. Ahan moved a stool from the side and let ACI sit down. Akir crossed her arms and glanced at Nether Wolf Crown Prince and his wife. She sneered. You don't know how to appreciate favors. My big brother Yas didn't even want to be long-winded with you. Who would have thought that you would actually dare to secretly scheme behind his back and try to salvage the situation? Turning the tide, Yas replied nonchalantly. Yes, you still want to turn the tide. Akir snorted and said, I don't even know where you got the guts to trouble my big brother Yas to personally deal with you. All right, don't waste your breath on him. Read the Imperial Edict. Yes. An old eunuch shakily walked out from behind Yas, spread out the Imperial Edict and read aloud. Crown Prince Hell Wolf is close to evil officials, not benevolent and righteous, far from a gentleman, close to a villain, immoral and immoral. With every sentence the old eunuch said, Nether Wolf's face sank deeper into a deathly gray. The crown princess was trembling at the side. Mr. Zhuang was so angry that his whole body trembled like a sieve. He shouted angrily, "Slander, this is slander. You guys! How dare he falsify the imperial edict? Framing His Highness the Crown Prince. Only dethroning the Crown Prince," ACI coldly said. "Tomorrow at the imperial court, Imperial Father will officially crown me as the Crown Prince." Nether Wolf Crown Prince spat out a mouthful of blood that he had suppressed in his heart. ACI coldly glanced at him and indifferently said, "Eldest brother, you should take care of your body." Chapter 2292. You. Sir Zhuang pointed at Ming Yasi with trembling fingers. "You guys, how can the dethroned crown prince be so trifling?" When the news spread to Divine Prefecture and Song Province, the two monarchs laughed their heads off. Ming Yasi curled his lips and smiled coldly at the master and servant trio. "So it's trifling? Dethroned crown prince, I advise you to properly recuperate in Qingyuan Palace Hall and not run around. Otherwise, you might not even know how you lost your life." Underworld Wolf Crown Prince sat paralyzed on the ground and didn't regain his senses for a long time. Imperial Father, in the afternoon, he spoke to him in a negotiating tone. "Underworld Wolf, you're not suitable for the position of Crown Prince. Why don't you abdicate and give it to your third brother? What do you think?" He didn't expect that after only 4 hours, he would issue an imperial edict to dethrone the Crown Prince. Underworld Wolf Crown Prince's vision was a blur, and he couldn't hear his wife Su Fu's screams. He only felt that his eyes were sticky, and he couldn't see anything clearly. He could faintly hear someone screaming in panic. "Quickly find an imperial physician. Find an imperial physician. His Highness the Crown Prince's eyes are bleeding." "It's just a dethroned Crown Prince. Why are you so nervous?" Ahan smiled and said with his hands on his hips, "Someone, find a physician to examine this dethroned Crown Prince's condition. Don't pass out all of a sudden. This is a good day for me to ascend to the position of Crown Prince. I don't want big brother and sister-in-law to die on the spot." Ming Yasi coldly swept his gaze over the dethroned Crown Prince and his wife, and his gaze fell on Sir Zhuang. "Big brother, how should we deal with this old man? Kill him?" Ming Yasi sneered and turned to walk out of the palace hall. He couldn't keep an old man by his side, who could give advice to the dethroned Crown Prince at any time. Apart from this old man, with the dethroned Crown Prince's IQ, he would never have the qualifications to make a comeback. A cold glint flitted across Ming Yasi's eyes. He flicked his sleeves and walked out of the palace hall. He raised his head to look at the silhouettes of the palace buildings illuminated by the clear moonlight. "Big brother, don't blame me for being ruthless. I originally had no intention of competing with you. However, the position of Crown Prince was something that I had to obtain. If he didn't have an equal status, if he didn't have the connections, resources, and power that he deserved, what qualifications did he have to compete with that person? Crown Prince Lian of the Divine Land, are you ready?" As long as he ascended to the position of Underworld Crown Prince, he was bound to get what he wanted. Ha ha ha. Arbor pulled her furry cloak a little tighter, held the gold-beaded talisman pen, and continued to draw her talismans on the back of the fire phoenix. The journey was really boring. The group left Ani Prefecture. In order to speed up their journey, Arbor summoned the ancient fire phoenix to carry them to Shentian Prefecture. With the fearsome aura emanating from this big fellow along the way, they didn't have to worry about any foolish flying spirit beasts pouncing on them. Zhou Huan and the others vomited bile for the first 2 days, that she was a little better these 2 days, but her face was still pale. She was quite pitiful. Arbor didn't feel that little fire phoenix was flying at all. She always felt that it was flying very steadily. She didn't understand why Zhou Huan and the others always said that it was very bumpy. It was probably little Phoenix deliberately messing with them. Even if she was unhappy, she still had to carry 8 men? Huahua, get down quickly. Below them was the long-awaited thunderous plain. She wanted to sit on the land whale and play. Ugh! After getting down, Zhou Huan only felt that her steps were light. She swayed to the side, squatted down and vomited. Chapter 2293. The Bloodfire Phoenix curses angrily. Bastard. What are you vomiting for? I won't carry them next time. A group of men who came from the mountains and had never seen the world. He gave them the honor of riding the ancient fire phoenix. And they actually dared to vomit at him? Vomit your sister. Arbor holds his forehead and withdraws the swearing Bloodfire Phoenix. He turns to look at the 8 people who are vomiting dizzily. How are you guys? Eldest Miss. Zohuan feels like a worm crawling to Eldest Miss's leg and calls out pitifully. He did it on purpose. It's been hard on you. Arbor squats down with a dark expression and touches Zohuan's little head. He reaches out and pours out an anti-vomiting pill from the bottle. Take another one. In a while we will ride the land whale. It will be very stable. Zohuan, Qihua, and the others only feel slightly better after taking the medicine. After resting for 5 minutes on the spot, everyone finally stops feeling dizzy and vomiting. They all look pitifully at Arbor. Arbor twitches the corner of his mouth. Huhua is too playful. Don't worry, we will ride Qingwan later. My Qingwan has a gentle temperament. It definitely won't be bumpy anymore. Now, let's go find the land whale first. Arbor runs in the direction of the land whale. Quickly follow me. Qihua stares blankly and can't help but laugh. These few days, Eldest Miss has been looking old and steady all day. It's really rare to see such a cheerful little girl. Haha. Fong Wenyao and his brother can't help but laugh. Let's go, quickly follow. The group arrives at the landing port of the land whale. Arbor pays the fee with familiarity and leads the 8 talisman masters to board the land whale's back and sit down. The land whale is quite fun. After sitting on it last time, Miss Qiao has been a little longing. Now that she has this opportunity, she might as well sit on it again and play. Tap tap tap. After a series of footsteps, the people who board the land whale come face to face with Arbor. Xiao Mu had just felt that these people were a bit familiar. One of the girls in their group could not help but scream. She pointed at Arbor and shrieked. Why are you here? Miss Qiao, do you still remember us? When we first entered Shuntian Prefecture, we met here at the land whale. Later, during the school tournament we would meet again. We are students of the Dawn Academy. I am Su Hao. Arbor looked at him blankly for a long time, feeling that the 7 people in front of him were familiar. He nodded his head in confusion. Su Hao couldn't help but smile and touch his nose. Is Miss Qiao alone? Then, what about Qi Xianxian and the others? Miss Qiao said expressionlessly. He went into seclusion to cultivate. Oh. Su Hao nodded and sat down with his people behind Xiao Mu and the others. The things in this small town are cheap. We actually came here to make a big purchase. Su Hao smiled and scratched his head. Su Hao, why are you telling her so much? The young lady who had previously pointed at Xiao Mu and shrieked impatiently with a stoic face. Aya, we all know each other. It's not too much to say a few words. Chen Yuhan, you little slut, shut up. Su Hao sighed. Stop arguing. Alright, the land whale is starting. Arbor only felt that these people were too noisy and automatically blocked their voices. He looked up at the thunderous plain and saw lightning bolts striking down. The land whale passed through smoothly, avoiding the lightning bolts at a fast speed. Hey, you, let me ask you. This land whale, are you selling it? The 6th watch ended. Chapter 2294. A big shot who wants to buy a land whale? Everyone's gazes all turned toward Xiao Mu. The woman who pointed at Arbor earlier can't help but laugh loudly. You want to buy a land whale? Do you have enough money to buy one? What a joke. The land whale is a 3rd-grade spirit beast. It can effectively avoid lightning and is very fast. How can this big guy be bought so easily? Moreover, my apologies, Mississippi. The old manager is slightly taken aback, then smiles. This land whale is rented by us. It actually belongs to the Shuntian Prefecture's main residence. Feeding the land whales every day is also very expensive. It's called a land whale. Can't it go into the water? It can. The old manager smiles again. This land whale is already a 3rd-grade spirit beast. It's not afraid of water. So it's a Shuntian Prefecture spirit beast. That makes things easier. Arbor takes out a communication jade talisman and writes a message to Dunzong. This land whale is so fun. She's interested. She originally wanted to buy it, but since Dun Zong can make the decision, then let him. Pay. Gift. Gift. Give it to Sir Jojo. Xiaomu put away the jade messenger talisman and tilted her small head. She didn't say anything else, and just closed her eyes to rest. Unexpectedly, he hears the woman's noisy laughter. Yo, didn't you want to buy a land whale? Why aren't you talking? Lu Tiantian, that's enough. I've told you so many times. This isn't Hong Yuan. Don't act like a princess in front of others. All you do is cause trouble for the team. Su Bang, I think you've been bewitched by that little bitch Chen Hanyu. Why don't you try scolding her again? Su Bang reaches out to protect the sobbing Chen Hanyu and angrily glares at the average-looking Lu Tiantian. Arbor glances at them. Suddenly, he has some impression of them. It seems that every time these people get together, there will be a dogfight. Forget it, Sir Jojo won't bicker with you. The little fellow folded her legs and leaned against the back of the chair, closing her eyes to rest. The land whale was running very smoothly, and it didn't feel any bumps at all. Its 8 short legs were running on the thunderous plain without any discomfort. Zhou Huan and the rest were overjoyed. Finally, he didn't have to suffer the pain of being tossed around on the blazing blood phoenix's back. Seeing that eldest Miss had closed her eyes, they didn't say much, and each of them began to draw the binding talismans they had just learned in their minds. The fact that young Miss was willing to teach them was a blessing that they had accumulated over 3 lifetimes. Everyone told themselves in their hearts that they must not disappoint young Miss' expectations of them. Eldest young Miss's expectation for them was that they had to advance to high-grade talisman masters within 3 months. They would work hard. The land whale stopped at the fixed parking spot at the city gate of Julu City. The city lord of Julu City, Hua Qingyu, was dressed in a white robe. He had been waiting at the city gate for a long time. Greetings, Miss Chiao. Hua Qingyu saw the man in the crowd at a glance. He hurried over and bowed respectfully to Arbor. He still remembered the first time he met this man. He didn't know her identity, but her methods left a deep impression on him. At that time, the beautiful fairy from the Palace of Cold Blood was beaten to death by this savage little girl. Done. Castellan Gung told you to wait for me here? Yes. Watching you bowed again. The land whale and a year's supply of food have been prepared. Miss Chiao, may I ask if 2 land whales are enough? Chapter 2295. Arbor nodded. Originally, she just wanted a land whale to play with. However, this city lord Hua was indeed a good person. Sir Jojo was a little happy, and his tense face relaxed a little. Bring me over to have a look. Yes. Hua Qingyu made an inviting gesture and brought Arbor to the parking spot on the side. Lu Tiantian and the others were so shocked that their jaws almost dropped. How is that possible? Lu Tiantian said to himself in surprise. This land whale is a level 3 spiritual beast, and he just sold 2 to her so casually. Su Hao was also a little surprised. However, out of curiosity, the passengers who had just landed from the land whale could not help but follow Hua Qingyu, Arbor, and Zhou Huan to the parking spot. Sure enough, they saw 2 super huge land whales lying lazily on the ground, basking in the sun. Oh my god, these 2 land whales are super huge. They must have been raised for many years. Such a huge land whale. There must be 50 or 60 people sitting on it. Wow, it's twice the size of a normal land whale. Everyone was talking at once, attracting the attention of the onlookers at the landing point. Everyone excitedly went around to ask what was going on. When they heard that a rich person wanted to buy a land whale, they all opened their mouths in surprise. Fuck, such a huge land whale. It's not convenient to carry around. He's buying 2 at a time. Unless he has a castle at home, how can he put it down? Isn't that so? Hey, how much are you buying this land whale for? Lu Tiantian could not help but frown and ask. Princess, he's buying a land whale. You don't have to worry about it. He's rich and can do whatever he wants. TSK. Chen Hanyu could not help but mock. Shut up. I'm not talking to you. Lu Tiantian said angrily. Chen Hanyu rolled her eyes at her, leaned against Su Bang and said sweetly, Brother Bang, look at the princess, she's scolding me again. You should shut up. Don't make a fool of yourself here. Su Bang scolded Lu Tiantian, causing the princess's mediocre face to be filled with anger. Watching you politely bowed to Arbor and said with a smile, Miss Chow, please go up and check it. If there is no problem, I will take you to the food. Arbor looked up at the 2 land whales lying on the ground. Even though this enormous land whale was lying there motionless, she felt that it was so magnificent and huge. The little girl stood beside the short elephant leg of the land whale like a little girl. When she looked up, she could only see the white breath that the land whale exhaled. So, the little girl leaped into the air and landed lightly on the land whale's head. She looked expressionless, but if Emolien was here, she would definitely feel the little girl's excitement. Little guys, I'll have to trouble you to stay in the storage talisman for half a day. Arbor waved her hand, and 2 purple lights filled her fingertips. 2 thin jade talismans moved along with the airflow. 2 circles of purple light immediately fell on the 2 land whales, and in a short while, the 2 land whales were kept in the 2 purple talismans. After Arbor landed lightly, the light in her hand dimmed slightly, and she held the purple talisman in her hand. Zhou Huan Chi Hua. And the others were so excited that their eyeballs almost fell out. They surrounded Xiao Mu with a whoosh and shouted in a stuttering and impassioned voice. Z. Purple. Supreme Grade Purple. Supreme Grade Purple. Chapter 2296. Pinch me. See if my eyes are playing tricks on me. Brother, you're not playing tricks on me. I saw it too. Purple talisman. Purple talisman. Thank God. He was lucky enough to see a legendary purple talisman in this life. Oh, this was a great opportunity. Oh, brother, you're so excited that you're stuttering. Phew. Arbor heaved a sigh of relief. If not for the 2 peerless purple talismans that she had drawn, it would have been difficult for her to store these 2 gigantic fellows. She could not send them to Fish Orchid Planet in front of everyone. Miss Chow, you're so capable. The smile on Hua Qingyu's face deepened. He was certain that Miss Chow was someone with great magical powers. If not, the mansion master would not have cared so much about her. The message on the communication jade talisman was urgent. He had to take care of this and let Miss Chow return with satisfaction. Actually, he should have known earlier, shouldn't he? When he had first met her, he had thought that she was just an ordinary girl from the lower star region. He did not expect that she would be so good at using talismans when she was angry at the beautiful fairy from the Palace of Cold Blood at the city gate. She was such a young great talisman master. It was true that the younger generation would surpass the older generation. The younger generation would surpass the older generation. Where's the food you were talking about? Miss, this way please. Hua Qingyu hurriedly extended his hand and led her to the granary. Arbor took out 2 blue talismans and kept the food for the 2 land whales. Then, she nodded in satisfaction. Do land whales like fish? Yes, they like fish the most. Can this dried fish last them for a year? If it's dried fish, I'm afraid the land whales will get sick of it. Hua Qingyu said helplessly. Raw fish was not easy to prepare, so he had prepared these as backup food. How about we put them into the sea? That would naturally be for the best. Hua Qingyu nodded quickly and added, land whales move very fast. If we put them into the sea, Miss Chow, you have to be careful not to let them escape. Oh, Hua Qingyu said with a smile. In addition, there is a high-level spirit beast crystal core placed in the lower abdomen of these 2 land whales to suppress it. It's best not to remove it. Otherwise, the land whales won't listen to orders and might run around. After all, it was a spirit beast with intelligence. Arbor waved his small hand. Thank you for your trouble, City Lord Hua. I still have matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave now. Okay. See you off Mississippi. Hua Qingyu bowed respectfully. When he looked up, he saw that the energetic little girl had already summoned a huge blue bird and flew off into the distance with the 8 young men who were with her. Lu Tiantian exclaimed, She didn't pay. Everyone looked at her with disdain. Wasn't this girl's focus a bit strange? Seeing City Master Hua cupping his hands and bowing politely, how could he possibly ask the little girl for money? The 2 land whales and so much food must have been given to him by the Julu city lord for free. Ridiculous. Su Bang looked at Lu Tiantian angrily. He felt that this woman was embarrassing him in every way. She was not at all as decent and gentle as Chun Hanyu. As the team leader, Su Hao naturally felt awkward. He tried to persuade Princess Lu and said, "We've been out for a long time. We have to return to the academy as soon as possible." Chapter 2297. Yellow Crane. After hurrying back to Shentian Prefecture for 2 consecutive days, Xiao Mu found a certain yellow crane that was in closed-door seclusion to refine pills, and was in a deranged state. The moment he kicked the door open, he smelled a moldy and sour smell that drifted over with the wind. Arbor immediately blocked his 5 senses with an expressionless face. The inn's waiter pinched his nose and followed behind Arbor, shouting, "Sir, your friend is simply crazy. Ever since you left, these 10 to 20 days, she didn't leave the house and only ate 1 meal a day. Our innkeeper almost thought that she was going to die in this room." Arbor. Fairy Yellow Crane was paralyzed on the ground. Beside her was a yellow cauldron refining pill furnace, which was emitting a charred smell. In any case, Arbor didn't smell anything and didn't know what it was. The inn's waiter behind her immediately fainted from the smell and fell heavily on the ground. Arbor. Why the hell did he feel that this scene was actually a little funny? Yellow Crane. Yellow Crane. If you're not dead, hurry up and get up. Fairy Yellow Crane seemed to hear a familiar voice in a daze. She opened her eyes and looked blankly. Then, she suddenly straightened her body like a corpse and rolled to hug Arbor's ankle, crying out, "Jojo, you're here to save me. Ah, you're finally back. I've been refining a level 8 spirit breakthrough pill, and failed repeatedly. I'm simply going crazy. You are just a black level alchemist with meager cultivation. What do you need a level 8 spirit breakthrough pill for?" Xiao Mu exerted all her strength to pull her legs out from her 2 suffocatingly smelly arms. However, Fairy Yellow Crane was hugging a pillar, refusing to let go no matter what. Jojo, if I can't refine a level 8 spirit breakthrough pill in this life, I won't be able to live." Arbor suddenly felt like he had made friends carelessly and suffered 8 lifetimes of bad luck. Could this joker be any more funny? Get up. Go take a bath right now. Arbor felt that his broken voice could probably shake the entire inn. "You're so fucking smelly that I can't even block my 5 senses anymore." After the time it took for 2 incense sticks to burn, Fairy Yellow Crane, who had washed herself clean and regained her beautiful appearance in the past, slowly walked out from behind the screen while holding a strand of wet hair. "Jojo." Fine. Arbor stretched out his hand to block her flying figure. "Take this alchemy book and study it yourself. I'll send you to a place. The time there is 12 times slower than the outside world. That should be enough for you to succeed. I'll call you out when we reach the Divine Land." 12 times. Fairy Yellow Crane stared at her in a daze, feeling as if she had heard fake news. "The Divine Land? Yes. I came back to pick you up this time." Arbor curled his lips. "Wait until we go to Shenzhou. When the time comes, I'll let you out. For the time being, you can stay in my..." Arbor shut his mouth, speechlessly looking at a certain someone who was holding the alchemy book and immersing herself in it. This joker. Arbor stretched out his hand to write a note and pressed it against Fairy Yellow Crane's forehead, asking Little Tree to send her to the Fish Orchid planet. He found a desolate island on the sea and threw her there, letting her immerse herself in alchemy cultivation. 20 days passed on the Fish Orchid planet, but the actual time was only 40 hours. On the small desolate island with dense spirit chi, Fairy Yellow Crane finally succeeded in refining a level 8 spirit breakthrough pill. She jumped up in excitement. Wow, success! Chapter 2298. When she jumped, she suddenly realized that something was wrong. Why was she stepping on a thin white beach? Surrounded by water, what was going on? Was this an island? Fairy Yellow Crane spent another day, 2 hours in the outside world, to run 1 round around the island. She hugged the tree and screamed in horror. This is a deserted island? Why am I the only one here? Yellow Crane's heart was filled with curses, 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 curses. This was actually a deserted island? Ah, Jojo, Jojo, where am I? Fairy Yellow Crane screamed for a while, then looked up slightly, and took down a piece of paper stuck on her forehead. She saw a line of delicate words written on the paper. Don't panic when you encounter something. Just call out Sir Jojo. Was he trying to tease her? Huang He looked at the lousy piece of paper over and over with a dumbfounded expression. He tried to circulate his qi, and let out a high-pitched scream. Lord Xiao Xiao. What responded to her was a flock of birds flying away in fright. Little Yellow Crane has woken up. Arbor sat on the beach and watched Little Tree grill fish virtuously. His eyes were fixed on Emolien, who had been in seclusion refining for a long time without any movement. Poor child, she must have been frightened. Arbor took the grilled fish that Little Tree handed over, and took a small bite. It was so hot that his tongue shrank back. Speaking of which, where did you throw her to? The last time she came in, she did not sense Yellow Crane's position, that he threw her too far away. On the island. There are many small islands like this in the sea. I threw her on one of the deserted islands. Surrounded by the sea, the environment is beautiful. Little Tree waved his branches and said excitedly, Master, you said before that you can't let her furnace explode every 2 to 3 days and affect the senior sister's cultivation. Arbor's mouth twitched. Then I'll write a letter, pass it to her. Master, you can write. Arbor took out a pen and paper from his inner world, casually wrote a few lines, stuffed the letter into an envelope, and threw it to the small tree. Yellow Crane, don't panic. Just stay on the uninhabited island for a while. Chiochio will bring you food every day, so don't worry. This place's spiritual energy is rich, and will be greatly beneficial to your alchemy cultivation. Oh, remember to take a bath. Signed, Jojo. Sama. Arbor threw out the 2 purple talismans and walked to the beach. He opened the talismans, and took out 2 super large land whales. Wait. Arbor leaped onto one of the land whales. He raised his hand, and sucked the high-grade spirit beast's crystal core out of the whale's belly. The 2 land whales immediately jumped into the sea happily. They slid their huge bodies, and gradually sank into the sea. Xiaomu squatted on a rock that had been polished by the seawater until it was round and smooth, and she gazed into the water with curved eyes. Suddenly, she heard a thunderous voice. A land whale poked its head out of the sea and nodded at her in greeting. Arbor waved his little hand, and a faint smile appeared on his lips. Little Tree at the side huffed at the 2 branches and cursed in his heart. Isn't it just big and strong? It actually made Little Master so happy. Humph, humph, humph. When Little Tree grows up, it will become the only super large tree that can support the sky and earth. At that time, humph, humph, nothing in this world can surpass Chiochio. Chiochio is Little Master's strongest reliance. Xiaomu tilted her small head. Suddenly, she seemed to have sensed something, and she hastily turned her head around. She then saw the motionless Emolien slowly opening his phoenix eyes. Chapter 2299. Underworld Region's Great Yong City's Jingyuan Hall. The newly issued edict to establish the Crown Prince still caused the courtiers to whisper to each other. Everyone secretly cast their gazes on the 3rd prince, Mingyasi, who was standing in front of the hall with a grave and stern expression. This 3rd prince, who had just returned home a few days ago, was indeed worthy of being the son of the imperial noble consort. In just a short period of time, he had won the favor of the emperor and established a new crown prince. This action made all the courtiers feel like it was child's play. After all, the emperor didn't inform anyone about the matter of deposing the crown prince, nor did he discuss it with the courtiers. He directly made the decision in the middle of the night. The underworld region's emperor, draped in a thick fur cloak, wrapped himself up like a winter melon, and slumped on the throne. He spoke listlessly, as if he was on his last breath. If there's nothing else to discuss, the court is dismissed. Your Majesty. An official in the front row suddenly strode forward and knelt down. The underworld wolf crown prince is wrongly accused. One of your Majesty's accusations against him is that he doesn't know how to be filial. This is extremely laughable. Lord Kong, an old courtier, who stood in the front row on the left, had a head full of white hair. But his berating voice was full of energy. Prime Minister Boo, there's no need to admonish me. I know my limits, Lord Kong said with tears streaming down his face. I also don't want your majesty to be fooled by scoundrels and mistakenly depose the crown prince. Bold, bold. The underworld region's emperor straightened his body, trembling as he picked up a piece of jade and smashed it at Lord Kang's head. Pacha. The jade fell to the ground and smashed into pieces. Lord Kang's face was deathly pale, but he couldn't stop himself from kowtowing repeatedly. He continued, the underworld wolf crown prince's filial piety can express the heavens, the earth, the sun and the moon. For the past 3 years, the underworld wolf crown prince has assisted your majesty in handling government affairs, and has been cautious and conscientious, not daring to make the slightest mistake. Furthermore, the underworld wolf crown prince said that this year, he would go to the heavenly snow region for your majesty, and pluck the snow region's divine flowers to nourish your majesty's body. Everyone knows what kind of place the heavenly snow region is. That's a place of extreme cold, where danger lurks within 100 chi radius. The underworld wolf crown prince must have great determination and courage. How much he loves your majesty to dare to go to such a place to pluck the snow region's divine flowers for your majesty. Shut up. The underworld continent's emperor shouted angrily, as he slammed his hand on the dragon throne. That's enough, Lord Kong. The courtiers also tried to persuade him. What Lord Kong means is that you're going to use the Snowland divine flower to express your love and respect for Imperial Father? Ming Yasi suddenly asked with a cold expression. His voice was low and elegant, and it revealed an indescribable tension. It seemed as if as soon as he spoke, it caused everyone present to want to go silent like cicadas in winter. This third prince was tall, handsome and domineering. As soon as he returned, he seized the position of crown prince. Sure enough, compared to the nether wolf crown prince who was indecisive and had a weak character, his attitude was much more unyielding. Lord Kong lay on the ground, his forehead firmly pressed against the ground as he wailed bitterly. The underworld wolf crown prince's pure filial piety can move the heavens and move the earth, can illuminate the sun and moon. Shut up. The dark continent's emperor coughed repeatedly, drowning out his angry roar. Ming Yasi took a step forward and knelt on one knee. He raised his head and looked sharply at the emperor on the throne. Imperial Father, since the courtiers have said so, as your son, I naturally can't shrink back in the slightest. Please allow Imperial Father to allow me to lead 2,000 soldiers to the heavenly snow region's divine flowers, to nourish your majesty's body. Fragmented Memories. Chapter 2300. His lotus was in closed-door foraging mode. He was awake. Like a tiger cub foraging for food, Xiaomu pounced into Emolien's embrace with a swish. The latter smiled and hugged her waist. Looking down at her, he said softly, Jojo, were you waiting for your husband here? Arbor nodded his little head vigorously. Master Jojo, a trembling voice came from the sky, instantly dispersing the blurry atmosphere. Emolien was speechless. Strange, why did it sound so much like Huang He's voice? Arbor pulled Emolien with one hand and turned to walk towards the beach. Lotus, when you were foraging, I picked up 2 land whales. Do you want to take a look? It's fun. The little one pulled his hand and walked to the beach. Stepping on a rock, she shouted, Big whale. The sea was very calm without any waves. 2 minutes later, there was a huge whirlpool on the sea. A huge land whale emerged from the water and looked at the couple on the shore with its lantern-like eyes. Arbor took out an arm-length dried fish from his inner world and threw it across the sea. The land whale spat out saliva and caught the dried fish. Munching on it, it sank to the bottom of the sea. Miss Chiao pursed her lips, unable to hide her smile. Looking up at Emolien, she said, It's fun. When the little fellow raised his head, he happened to see the man staring at him without blinking. His voice slowly lowered. Why are you looking at me without blinking? My Jojo, you look good. Emolien reached out to caress her cute little face and pulled her into his arms. He just hugged her without saying a word. Actually, he was very happy. This little one had completely let down her guard in front of him. In that instant, she revealed the delicate side of a little girl, revealing a little bit of her childlike innocence. He hoped that she could be like this now, smiling like a flower forever. No matter where she went, he would protect her and ensure her safety. Pung. A black ferrule appeared in Emolien's hand, and quietly laid horizontally in his palm. It looked exactly the same as before, but Arbor felt his heart ripple with excitement, as if Inky, the ruler, was calling out to him. Pick it up, pick it up. Arbor stretched out her hand, and the black ferrule jumped into her hand with a whoosh. It was about 5 inches long and 2 inches wide. Ink flowed on it, and its brilliance dimmed. As soon as he held Arbor in his hand, he felt an unusual surge of power. Collect! With a thought, the ferrule melted into her palm. Her body was instantly infused with a mysterious power. It was as if there was no need for words between her and the ruler. Just like that strange startled swan dagger, as long as a thought flashed through his mind, it would immediately launch an attack outwards. Bang! A bright blue flame ignited in Arbor's palm. The flame was so blue that it was quiet and intense. The light was so dazzling that she closed her eyes slightly. This is the 8th grade blue spiritual cleansing fire. Emolien must be satisfied as well. He curled the corner of his lips and said, only a high-level 5 spirit source above the 7th grade can give it a name. The Heavenly Fire Secret Silver actually produced an 8th grade spiritual fire. This should be the credit of the Divine Weapon Master. This 8th grade spiritual fire is very pure in nature. It's almost comparable to my purple flames. Jojo, are you happy? Arbor nodded her little head repeatedly. She was so happy that she almost wagged her little tail. Chapter 2301. With a wave of his hand, Emolien summoned Debeo again. The moment Debeo came out, he said as usual, Ah, my beautiful and invincible little Emperor Master. Debeo missed you so much. Arbor turned her little head away. Emolien couldn't help but chuckle softly. He hugged her waist and lowered his head to whisper in her ear. What's wrong, Jojo? Whenever you meet someone or something that gives you a headache, you have to change your habit of not talking. If you have nothing to do, bring Debeo with you and talk to you. His Jojo was very interesting. Every time she finished a series of words, she would put on an expression, as if the world was about to end. After that, no matter how others teased her, she would be too lazy to speak and look disinterested. Moreover, whenever she met something she didn't want to talk about, she would always put on a poker face, and be stubborn, and keep her mouth shut. That he always wanted to tease this little fellow. Arbor glared at him. In her heart she cursed. In the past, Debeo would only say, ah, my beautiful little master when he came out. Now that he's improved, it feels like there are more words to describe her. Noisy. I used Thunderstruck Wood and Heavenly Fire Secret Silver to reforge Debeo's body. Now it's equivalent to an immortal bone body. The realm of a body cultivator can't be increased, but its actual ability should be beyond a 15th level body cultivator, and can fight against an 8th level spiritual master. Jojo, look. At Emolien's signal, Big Treasure turned around, and a serene blue flame flashed across his shiny black body. With a punch, he directly pulverized several huge rocks on the beach into fine powder along with the blue flame. There was also a deep crater on the beach. Her Debeo had become powerful. Arbor's little mouth opened. She hurriedly shouted, don't hit. But her beach was killed. She saw that the small crabs were beaten out of the pit. They were so scared that they ran around in panic. How pitiful. She had planned to fatten them up and cook them for dinner, that if they were killed now, what would they eat in the future? Emolien lowered her head and glanced at her little face. She hugged her and chuckled softly. Chiochio is free. Let it go to the replenishing beach. Arbor rubbed his belly and blinked at Emolien. Hubby Jojo is hungry. I want to eat porridge. Okay. How about I cook fish porridge for you? Emolien kissed her forehead with a grin, and with a flick of his sleeve, he released a black, copper-colored golem. Jojo, this is number 1. Keep him by your side in the future. If there's anything dangerous, just let him do it. It doesn't matter if he dies. I still have 2 and 3 in my hands. I'll be able to use them after forging for a while. Xiaomu curiously glanced at that one. He was taller than Debao, and was not as smart and noisy as Dabao. When you don't let him move, he will just stand there and do nothing. Perhaps this is a normal golem, Xiaomu thought. He didn't seem to be as durable as Dabao, so his strength was probably average. This mechanical puppet is a level 15 Great Mystic Cultivator. Its level is too low. Emolian had her put it away and said with a grin, "No need to feel heartache. Just let him go to those dangerous places." Arbor found it a bit strange. This mechanical puppet was Prince Mo's creation after all. Of course, she would feel heartache if it was damaged. He actually told her not to feel heartache. So strange. Moreover, didn't mechanical puppets only become body cultivators? How could they become level 15 Great Mystic Cultivators? Arbor scratched her little head. Chapter 2302. Meanwhile, Emolian glanced coldly at Golem 1, who was standing by the beach. She sneered inwardly. "Luigi, when you died, you probably didn't expect that you would become my Xiao's puppet slave even after your death. If your mechanical body doesn't collapse or die in this lifetime, you will have to continue working for my Xiao to atone for your sins. This is your fate." Arbor naturally didn't know that Golem 1 was a mechanical puppet that Emolian had reconstructed using Luigi's blood and soul. After keeping the item in his inner world, Arbor removed the merging power of the feral ink and stored it in his own conscious. Then, she looked up at Emolian and rubbed against his chest. "Fish porridge. I'll cook it now." Emolian smiled as he held her hand and asked, "Do you want to eat corn?" "MHM." The little fellow nodded vigorously. "Cute." Emolian held back his laughter and patted her head. Facing the sea, they listened to the calm rise and fall of the waves. After Xiaomu ate 2 bowls of fish porridge and gnawed on a piece of corn, she rubbed her small, round belly before collapsing into Emolian's embrace, motionless. Sleep for a while before going out. The little fellow always had the habit of taking afternoon naps and dozing off after eating. Who knew who had spoiled her? Miss Chiao turned over and showed him the back of her head. After a full nap, Miss Chiao left Fish Orchid Planet with Prince Mo. The sky outside was already completely dark. Zhou Huan and the rest didn't disturb them and practiced talisman techniques in their rooms. Early the next morning, Miss Chiao let a handsome man out of her room and bumped into them in the corridor. Zhou Huan glanced at Emolian in astonishment. When she saw his icy gaze sweeping over her, she involuntarily shrunk her neck and asked, Eldest miss, when did the son-in-law come?" The people around Miss Chiao always appeared and disappeared mysteriously, just like that second uncle master, who seemed to have mysteriously disappeared. That this son-in-law came and left quickly. "My husband has always been by my side," Arbor said casually. He held Emolian's hand and walked downstairs. Zhou Huan opened her mouth, and Chihua hurriedly tugged at her sleeve. "Don't ask too much about the eldest Mrs. Matters. Since she's willing to tell us, let's just listen. Don't ask anything else." After all, Zhou Huan was the youngest. After being reminded by Chihua, she nodded clearly. They were all smart people. They had long realized how different the eldest young miss they followed was compared to others. Not to mention that the talisman creation books and spiritual techniques that she took out were all of the best quality. Take the ancient fire phoenix and the blue wand as an example. Were they things that ordinary people could possess? Eldest Miss had a lot of secrets. They had just started following Eldest Miss, so it was reasonable for Eldest Miss to hide things from them. After spending more time together, as long as they performed well in front of Eldest Miss, and made her feel that they were trustworthy people, she would definitely treat them differently. The two of them had eaten a sumptuous breakfast on Fish Orchid Planet. Naturally, they were not interested in a pot of millet porridge. Seeing Zhou Huan and the rest eating the millet porridge with white steamed buns with relish, Arbor took out a plate of minced meat and cornbread from his inner world and placed it in front of them. "Eat." Jojo hated eating white steamed buns the most. Vegetable buns or meat buns were what she liked. She didn't like bean buns or sesame buns either. Chapter 2303. Stunned, Zhou Huan and the others quickly reached out to grab the mincemeat steamed buns. They were not stupid. With delicious mincemeat steamed buns, they naturally kept the white steamed buns in their inner worlds. Arbor silently glanced at them and made an evaluation in her heart. They were quite thrifty. At this moment, a group of people came in through the door. Xiaomu reflexively looked back, and her expression involuntarily froze. The group of people who came in through the door was led by a 15-year-old youth wearing a brocade cloak. When he saw Arbor, his eyes suddenly lit up and he called out to her, "Jojo, why was the young master of the Zhu family in Wenka City here?" Arbor nodded at him. Patriarch Zhu quickly walked up and bowed with a smile. "Little godly doctor, what a coincidence. We met the little godly doctor as soon as we entered the city." Arbor looked at him helplessly. "Why are you here?" Zhu family head smiled and said, "It was Manor Head Gung who gave the order to transfer me here. The residence has not been settled yet, so we plan to stay at the inn for a few days." "So you'll be staying at the Shuntian Prefecture Lord residence from now on?" "Yes." "Then he would be promoted." Arbor replied with an "oh," and turned to look at young Master Zhu Su's complexion. "Your son's complexion is rosy and his breathing is steady. He should be almost cured. Take my prescription for another 10 days. Then he can stop taking the medicine." Patriarch Zhu was overjoyed and thanked Arbor repeatedly with cupped hands. The few of them chatted for a while. Then, Zhu family's head took the young master upstairs. After Arbor and Emolian left the city, they found a secluded place and released all the teachers and students from the top academy. After a discussion, Wei Wei, Zhou Danjin, and the others planned to return to the academy and tell Dean Yunfei about the situation. Qi Xianxian and the others naturally made up their minds and ran away with Arbor. Zhou Danjin said a few words to the students, and then said, "If you want to go to the Divine Land, it will not be an easy thing. Jojo, why don't you come back to the academy with us? The dean should know more about this." "Yes," Wei Wei said with a straight face. "If you insist on going, I can provide you with a map. The main entrance of Shuntian Prefecture to the Divine Land is on the hillside behind Mount Mang." Yes, it's near Gale Town." Zhou Danjin nodded and said, "Gale Town is a town that gradually became popular because of this main passage. Because it's the closest place to China, the town may sell some good things that we don't often see outside." Arbor was not very interested in shopping. He just nodded and said, "Can I go to Shenzhou at any time?" "Of course not," Wei Wei said in a muffled voice. "Why are you in such a hurry to go to the Divine Land? Although your cultivations are considered outstanding in the younger generation of the 6 prefectures, your cultivation is still very low. But if you go to the Divine Land, maybe you'll be nothing." That's right. You can continue to cultivate in the academy for another 10 years or so. It won't be too late to go to the Divine Land after that," Zhou Danjin also advised. "I've wanted to go to the Divine Land for a long time," Arbor said calmly. "Instructors, what do you think about the spirit qi of the 6 prefectures compared to the fish orchid planet?" Wei Wei was speechless. Zhou Danjin rubbed his chin and coughed lightly. Yes. If you go to the Divine Land, you can cultivate in the fish orchid planet for a while." Arbor nodded and said, "Xian and the others can continue to cultivate for a while." Chapter 2304. As for her, the Divine Land was so big that she needed to get to know it better. Besides, she wanted to see the expressions of the people who tried so hard to stop her from going to the Divine Land when they saw her. There's a transportation array in Mount Mang. You need to pay enough spirit stones to activate it. It can only transport one person at a time. The array is only activated on the 15th. If you go now, you'll have to wait for a few days. No need. Arbor reached out and grabbed a small boat. It said that there are no obstacles in the upper 3 prefectures, the middle 6 prefectures, and the lower star area. Red firmament wave. Wei Wei was shocked. But Zhou Danjin was calm. He had seen this ship before. He nodded with emotion. "All right. Instructor, you forgot that you have such a divine weapon. Then there's no problem. When you go to the Divine Land, you have to be careful. It's good that you change your temper." Arbor pursed his lips. After bidding farewell to the nagging instructors, Arbor took Qi Xianxian, and the others back to Fish Orchid Planet, and let them cultivate on their own. Then he returned to the inn, took Zhou Huan and the others, summoned the Blue Luan, and rushed to Mount Mang with Emolien and the others. Are you afraid? Arbor turned and asked the youths. Those people shook their heads in unison. It would be a lie to say that they were not afraid. With their cultivation and talisman power, they were going to follow Eldest Miss to the Divine Land. Wouldn't that make people panic? Would they be afraid? What was fear? Since they had made up their minds to follow Eldest Miss, they would not frown even if they had to climb a mountain of swords, or plunge into a sea of fire. Xiaomu curled her lips slightly, and the moment she neared Mount Mang, she tossed out the crimson firmament blue wave ship. She watched as it transformed into a magnificent sight before her eyes. In the blink of an eye, it expanded in the wind and transformed into a giant 3-story ship. Zhou Huan, Qi Hua, and the others stared so hard that their eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. Before they could think about it, Arbor patted their backs. Let's go. Zhou Huan and the others flew out involuntarily and landed on the ship. This ship was actually floating in the air, drifting with the wind. With Zhou Huan's young temperament, he immediately cried out in joy. He leaned against the mast and looked down at the blue sky, white clouds, and the small hill that had turned into a black dot. He could not help but laugh out loud. Amazing! Is this ship a flying spirit artifact? Spirit weapon? After all, this was a saint artifact. Arbor glanced at the youth speechlessly. He walked to Emolien's side and held her hand. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Then, they turned their heads to look at the vast mountains. Let's go, Arbor asked. Emolien nodded. Okay, there's no time like the present. Let's go. No matter where Jojo goes, I will follow. Emolien reached out and hugged her waist. She pointed to the front and said, "Give the order." Arbor buried his head in his chest and rubbed it. With a thought, the whole ship started to move and flew towards the depths of the Mang Mountains. At this time, some merchants who were doing business in Gale Town, squatting at the door of the inn and waiting for the 15th passage to open, the practitioners looked up at the sky in surprise. In the originally quiet depths of the mountains, there was a loud rumbling sound. What? Is this the transmission array? Impossible. It's not the 15th passage. How can the transmission array react? While everyone was whispering, a layer of light shrouded the sky. Chapter 2305. The passage to the Divine Land was really opened by force. Everyone jumped up in surprise and looked at the sky. There, divine power lingered, and layers of light golden light overflowed, as if clusters of dazzling fireworks were lit in the sky at this time. In the vast light golden halo, the marvelous scenery of the upper 3 provinces appeared. The 99-story beast ceiling tower of the Divine Land towered into the clouds. The vast snow of the Zhangzhou Prefecture. At the ferry of the Forgetfulness River in the Underworld Prefecture, the mournful blood-colored flowers were in full bloom. The mist-like layers of golden light shrouded the ice and snow and gradually disappeared. The marvelous scenery of the immortal mountains with overlapping peaks also faintly disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. This scene was unforgettable for a long time. In a trance, they seemed to see a ship enter the misty immortal mountains, and in the end, it didn't leave any trace. Everyone in Gale Town was in an uproar. For a long time, the rumor that a giant ship had flown to the sky was still circulating in the town. Spring filled the building. Young Master Song Feng sat quietly in a small attic, his fingers flicking back and forth a small jade wine cup. After a slight noise on the stairs, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple, 7 men of different beauty, each with their own style, seductively gathered in the small attic. Young Master Song Feng was silent for a long time before he asked, "Fan Meng and Fan, you haven't come yet?" "They're here. Young Master. I've already packed my bags and was waiting to go on the road." The seductive man in red leaned against a pillar and winked at young Master Song Feng coquettishly. Young Master Song Feng was expressionless, and his eyes fell on Fan Meng and Fan Yu, who were slowly walking forward. "Since everyone is here, let's go. Remember to burn everything." On the 7th day of February, a big fire burned the spring-filled building to the ground. The fire was so big that it spread to the apricot house across the street and burned half of the apricot house. The procuress was so angry that she stood in front of the apricot house every day for 18 days, pointing at the spring-filled building across the street and cursing, "A bunch of sluts. It's better if they all rot in that building and never come out to harm people again." Top College of the Lava Mountains. After listening to Wei Wei, Zhou Danjin, and the others, Yun Fiang was silent for a long time. Then he nodded and said, "Although it's still early, the children of our academy are a group of hot-blooded youths. It's not impossible to suddenly go to the divine land. Dean Yu, since the children have made up their minds, we will support them." Yun Fiang clenched his fists tightly and looked at the few instructors in front of him with a serious expression. "Are you ready?" "Ah." Everyone shifted their gaze to the vice dean of the Buddhist faculty. "Brother, do you know what the dean is talking about?" "The top academies are setting off for Shenzhou. We will move the entire academy to Shenzhou and become a strong backing for the children." Everyone! Exclamation point. "Aya, Mr. Dean, how can you be so sure? Would the mentors who had not broken through the divine realm still have an advantage when they went to the divine land?" The sobbing Zhou Danjin and the rest returned to their respective courtyards to pack their luggage. "Dean, is it really okay to be in such a hurry?" After the teachers left, Master Wu Yin came out from the inner hall and sighed. "Other than the ghost grass, we haven't found anything in all these years. We can only go to the 3 prefectures to find the remaining materials." The plain-clothed man turned around and looked at Master Wu Yin with a determined gaze. "I believe that we will succeed." The two opened the door to the secret room and walked into an inner room filled with ice cubes. They looked at a serene ice sculpture in the distance. Chapter 2306. Divine Land, Dragon Flame City. Madame Goen's estate. Her slender, snow-white index finger lifted the chin of a beautiful man, and the red, soft and fragrant silk covering her body slid down from her milk-like skin to the ground, revealing her exquisite, snow-white, and graceful figure. Within the fluttering muslin curtain, sounds that made one blush and one's heart palpitate quickly rang out. The 2 young servant girls accompanying her blushed as they hurriedly retreated, closing the door behind them. Madame was nearly 50 years old, but her figure was even more enchanting. She was a bride every day, indulging in pleasure every night until dawn, and being nourished by all kinds of handsome men until she was rather moist and beautiful. She was truly envious to death. That concubine-born 5th young master of the Qin estate was truly good-looking. It was just that his body was a bit frail. She hoped that Madame would properly dote on him and not overdo it. It would be too much of a pity if she killed him. The 2 young servant girls hid behind the door and peeked for a while longer. Only then did they plan to retreat, their small faces as red as blood. Just as they turned around, one of the servant girls let out a yelp and unexpectedly bumped into a robust and broad chest. The newcomer's inner garment was boldly unbuttoned, revealing a handsome chest. A careless, teasing smile hung on his handsome face as he casually hugged the servant girl's waist. "Big sister Kaihui, your face is so red. TSK, you must be thinking of a man." Ah. Her body, which had long been aroused, fell limply into the man's embrace. Her face was so red that it seemed like blood was about to drip out. "Since that's the case, then let this Wei properly dote on big sister Kaihui." "Ah, young Master Wei, don't be like this, young Master Wei." That servant girl called out tenderly. She was half pushed and half hugged by the man. She buried her face in the man's embrace, allowing him to carry her away in large strides. "TSK." The other servant girl glared at the 2's departing figures with jealousy and hatred. She cursed, "Shameless little hussy. Madame treated people too leniently. She allowed this little slut to so brazenly seduce the young master in front of Madame's bedroom. Last time, she had mentioned to Madame that she couldn't indulge that little hussy Kaihui like this anymore. Madame, however, waved her hand indifferently and said that there was no need to care. Now that Madame had obtained the 5th young Sir Qin, that she yearned for so much perhaps, she would be even less concerned about the other young sirs. Damn it! The current Madame of the State Security wasn't living happily with fifth young Master Qin, under a red lawn tent like the young maidservant had imagined. That moaning and moaning just now was completely her own entertainment. No one else had touched her at all. She glared angrily at the man on the bed, who had been stripped naked and drugged with several types of aphrodisiac. At this moment, his head was covered in cold sweat, and his body was trembling nonstop. But he was still limp and motionless. The men of the Qin family were all tall and slender with exquisite features. Omega Kotoku and eldest young Master Qin were the most outstanding. However, those two people were not easy to deal with. This fifth Qin appeared to have a delicate temperament, but who knew that he was actually very unyielding. Damn it. The meat was already in her mouth, but she couldn't eat it. This made Madame's heart itch even more unbearably. A trace of resentment slid across Madame of the State Security's indescribably beautiful face. She reached out to stroke the man's face with extreme gentleness, as she exhaled a light pink fragrant mist. Fifth young sir, do you know that your appearance right now when you would rather die than submit is especially lovable? Unfortunately, no matter how resolute and unyielding a man, who has fallen into my state security's hands. Chapter 2307. In the end, you'll still lead a befuddled life under my bewildering fragrance. A pink fragrant mist curled around the man's face. In the haze, the fifth young master's skin was increasingly fair, and his features were picturesque. His jade-like forehead was covered in layers of cold sweat, and he bit down on his tightly pursed lips, leaving a faint trace of blood. Darling. Madame Guo's heart simply itched to the extreme as she looked at the man in front of her. She stroked him up and down with all her might with her red-painted fingers, and her red lips pressed against his, continuously exhaling a fragrant mist. Damn it! He was actually still clear-headed even after being hit by such a deep bewildering fragrance, and adding several types of aphrodisiac incense. It seemed like this man wasn't as frail as he appeared to be. His willpower was truly firm. This was like catching a rabbit right in front of your eyes, yet there was a thick defensive barrier between you, so you couldn't eat it no matter how hard you tried. Madame Guo was both anxious and angry. Her delicate body pressed against the fifth young master's, and she exhaled a fragrant breath next to his ear. Darling, darling, just open your eyes and look at me. On the bed, fifth Qin, who was drenched in cold sweat, abruptly opened his eyes. That pair of chilly eyes didn't contain any trace of emotion, as if they were 10,000 miles of frosty frost beneath the ice as he stared fixedly at her. Madame Guo's face flushed red, yet she was also quite angry. This pair of beautiful eyes looked at her, as if he was looking at a piece of filthy mud, making her feel so ashamed that she couldn't show her face. Her soft snake-like delicate body covered his body, moving inch by inch, and she said in exasperation, Darling, do you know who betrayed you and sent you into my estate? It's that seventh younger brother of yours, Takik. Did you think you could still escape unscathed after entering my countries and estate? Madame Guo caressed the man's ice-cold face, leaving a red lipstick mark on his cheek. My darling, why must you harm yourself like this? Hurry up and come over, okay? Truly disgusting. The man's chilly voice was just like his eyes, merciless and grave. Slap. Madame Guo flew into a rage out of humiliation, and she heavily slapped the fifth young master's handsome face. This man was so despicable. Madame of the National Security Agency swept the pair of golden wind glazed cups on the table to the ground in a frenzy. Clang! The precious glass cup was smashed into pieces. Coincidentally, there was a knock on the door, which made the impatient Madame of the National Security Agency angry and angry. She picked up a piece of silk and wrapped it around her body. She opened the door and slapped the person's face. You're looking for trouble. Can't you see that I'm busy? Madam. The steward was so scared that he knelt on the ground and crawled in front of the beautiful woman's white toes. He repeatedly kowtowed and said, Madam, please forgive me. Madam, please forgive me. This lowly one didn't dare to come and disturb you. It's just that outside the door, the eldest young master of the Qin estate brought people to fight their way in. Madame Goen's face contorted as she stomped on the steward's head. Idiot! Don't you know how to block? Block! What do you want to use to block this young master's path? A cheerful voice fell into Madame Gowen's ears. When she raised her eyes, she just happened to see a handsome young master, in a white robe gracefully walking to her side. He very flirtatiously used a small gold fan to prop up her blushing face, and he clicked his tongue and said, "Madame Gowen, you're truly beautiful to the point of making one's heart beat." The silk cloak on Madame Gowen's body covered the important parts, leaving a large portion of her fragrant shoulder exposed to the air. Chapter 2308. A man with weak self-control would definitely have a nosebleed at this moment. Yet eldest young Sir Chin could still tease her without a change in expression. Instead, it was Madame Gua who groaned at his teasing. She swayed her slender waist and wanted to stick close to eldest young Sir Chin, but he blocked her face with a wave of his small golden fan. "Madam, I am here today on my father's orders to bring fifth brother back to the estate." Family head Chin also knew about this. Madame Gua's face contorted again, and she hastily smiled obsequiously and coquettishly as she said, "Eldest young sir, you really like to joke. Why would your family's honorable fifth young sir be in the Gua's estate?" She refused to admit it. Eldest young sir's handsome brows knitted slightly, but his expression was very calm. If this bitch refused to admit it, with her status as a second-ranked titled noble lady, he indeed couldn't force his way in with his men. But this matter wasn't over yet. "In that case, my fifth brother really isn't here with Madam?" Eldest young Sir Chin didn't get angry and smiled mildly. "That's right. How would the Gua's estate dare to kidnap someone from the Chin estate? Don't you think so, eldest young sir?" Before Madame Gua's hand could land on Qin Xian's shoulder, her hand was slapped away by the latter's fan. "Ah!" Madame Gua clutched her reddened hand and glared angrily at the handsome and elegant man standing before her with a charming smile. He really hit her hard. This hateful man didn't know how to treat a woman with tenderness at all. "Since Madame has made it clear that my fifth brother isn't in your estate, then this young sir will take his leave." Eldest young sir bowed with a grin and turned to leave. He suddenly turned his head and smiled at her with pursed lips. "Oh, that's right. Madam, on the way here, I seem to have seen people from the Eastern Palace ferociously heading toward your estate with 2 lumps of mangled flesh. They looked so scary." Eldest young sir flicked his sleeve to cover his mouth and revealed a frightened expression. He blinked and smiled gracefully at the stupefied Madame Gua before leading a group of servants away, leaving behind a slender jade-like back view. This damned evildoer, his lightly pursed lips and bewitching appearance was truly too moving. Madame Gowen looked at the young master's back as he left. Her eyes were fixed on him. She felt her mouth dry and her heart rippled. Unfortunately, she couldn't eat him. She hated it so much that her teeth itched. It's fine. In any case, I've left the fifth young master behind. Even if I can't go up for the time being, I still have to get my hands back." Madame Gua's entire body was seething with anger. She returned to her room in a huff, and her eyes immediately widened. She only saw that there was no one in her boudoir. There was no sign of the young master in the red silk canopy. Her lover, her young and handsome lover, actually ran away in just a few minutes? Ah! Madame Gowen could not vent her anger. She was so angry that she gritted her teeth and smashed everything in the house, screaming madly in the house with disheveled hair. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, his gaze fell on the broken pieces of porcelain next to the bed. He couldn't help but be startled. Why was the golden phoenix glazed cup bestowed by His Majesty broken? When she turned her head and saw a servant girl timidly walk in, Madame Gowen immediately slapped her. "Why is my glazed cup broken?" The servant girl inexplicably suffered an unexpected calamity. She hurriedly knelt down in panic and said, Madam, this servant doesn't know. Just now, Madame was the only one smashing things in the room. Without asking, this glazed cup must have been broken by Madame. But now. Chapter 2309. The maidservant's eyes widened as she lay on the ground, trembling all over. "What's the use of keeping you if you don't know anything?" Madame Gowen shouted angrily. Madam, please spare me, Madame." Madame Gowen wanted to push the blame to a mere maidservant. How could she bear the crime of despising the emperor's grace? Destroying something bestowed by his majesty was a crime punishable by death. She was just a mere maidservant, and Madame Gowan was going to push her out to be a scapegoat. Bitch! How dare you break the glass cup bestowed by his majesty? Go to hell! Madame Gowan kicked the maidservant's face, sending her flying and vomiting blood. She fell heavily on the ground outside the door, and could not get up again. Madam! Third young Master Fu from the Eastern Palace sent 2 bloody maidservants over. The steward trembled as he led a few people to the door of Madame Gowan's bedroom, and knelt on the ground with a thud. He felt that he was so unlucky. The other shrewd stewards in the residence had all fled when they heard the news, and he was the only one who was involved in such a thing. He would definitely not end well. However, someone had just thrown these 2 balls of blood at their door and left. As a steward, he could not just leave these 2 balls of blood lying in front of his door like this. Madame Gowan's eyes widened when her gaze fell on the 2 balls of blood and flesh. No one could tell that these 2 balls of blood were 2 beautiful maidservants. These were the women she had sent to the Crown Prince's residence. The Crown Prince had not returned to the palace yet, and the people from the Eastern Palace dared to torture the maidservants she had sent. Damn it, everyone dares to defy me. Third young Master Fu also passed down a decree from His Highness, the Crown Prince, to all the officials in the various residences to bring back the young ladies within 3 days. If they are late, they will be killed every day. The third young master even posted a notice on the mission board in the big square in the city. Everyone has seen the notice, and everyone is talking about it enthusiastically right now. Crown Prince, you are so willful. You haven't returned yet, but you have already made a name for yourself in Dragonflame City. Your ruthlessness and viciousness have undoubtedly captured a large number of your subjects' fans. Right now, everyone was saying that the son resembled his father. As expected of the great emperor's biological son, Madame Guo's eyes were wide open. She was so angry that she wanted to tremble. What? That wretched Crown Prince Lian actually dared to disregard his aunt's face like this. He actually dared to be so resolute. It was obvious that he wanted to put her face in the mud and step on it. Why did everyone have to go against her? How hateful. Madame Gowan picked up the vase next to the door and smashed it on the manager's head. Sob, sob, sob. I knew I was going to be unlucky. The steward exclaimed, I'm so unlucky, and fainted on the ground. Gather the guards and follow me into the palace immediately. Madame Gowan was so angry that her heart and liver were trembling. She couldn't wait to immediately rush into the palace and cut that damned Fu Sanqian into pieces. A mere hanger-on of the crown prince actually dared to trample on the face of the madam of the Ministry of National Security. I heard that third young Master Fu is a handsome gentleman. A pale-faced old eunuch wretchedly followed Madame Gowan's footsteps and slandered. It doesn't matter if that fifth young Master Qin runs away. Madam can capture this third Fu back to warm your bed. Good idea. Madame Gowan aggressively led people to the Eastern Palace. Chapter 2310. On the other side, fifth young Sir Qin, who had been carried out of the state security estate by 2 shadow guards, was only wrapped in a thin white robe as he tightly covered himself. Upon exiting the state security estate, fifth young Sir got off the ground and walked on his own. Unexpectedly, his body was very soft, and he stumbled and fell to the ground. His personal pageboy Ling Ge supported fifth young Sir's arm and cried out in a sobbing tone, Why, young Sir, how are you? Help me back. Fifth young Sir gripped Ling Ji's hand tightly. Ling Ge could sense that her young Sir was continuously trembling in fear from the depths of his body to his soul. Upon returning to the Qin estate, fifth Qin shut himself in his room and changed the water 17 to 18 times within 2 hours. It wasn't until eldest young Sir arrived at his room that Ling Ge rolled to eldest young Sir's feet while bawling, eldest young Sir, please save my family's fifth young Sir. Qin Xian kicked open the door and saw his fifth brother, whose skin was flushed red from soaking in the bathtub, and was about to rot. He angrily pulled him out of the water. Useless thing. Eldest young Sir slapped this younger brother in exasperation for failing to live up to his expectations. He grabbed his clean white bathrobe and said angrily, I didn't spend so much effort to save you to see you rot in the bathtub. Do you hate? Are you angry? Are you unwilling? Then pull yourself together. With your brain. How could you not find a way to kill that bitch? Be Big Brother dirty. So dirty. Wash it off, wash it clean. Fifth young sir stumbled and threw himself onto eldest young sir's shoulder, holding his arm as his entire body trembled nonstop. Qin Xian sighed and reached out to hold his shoulder, crying bitterly with him. He was also extremely furious. His elegant and refined fifth brother, who usually only knew how to play the zither, had never suffered such humiliation. He definitely had to get payback from that bitch for this debt. You've been poisoned by several types of perfume. Do you want eldest brother to find you a few clean immature antidotes? No, don't. Fifth young sir pushed his eldest brother away and retreated several steps in horror. He covered his mouth with one hand and let out waves of retching. Women were so disgusting, so disgusting. He didn't want them to touch a single strand of his hair. Qin Xian was very helpless. He nodded and said, "Then I'll ask Dr. Chang to come over and help you. It's just that if this kind of powder is not dissolved, it will eventually affect your body. Big Brother doesn't want you to continue suffering." Fifth young Master Qin supported himself with one hand by the side of the bathtub, his eyes fixed on the clear water surface. Dirty, so dirty. Dirty. Qin Xian sighed and patted his fifth brother's shoulder. He walked out and called for Ling Ge. Take good care of young master during this period of time. Remove all the servant girls from the court. Yes. Eastern Palace. At the main entrance, there was a table carved from a golden elm. Third young Master Fu was there with 2 rows of guards. He was holding a book and a pen in his hand. Whenever a lord took a girl away, he would cross off a name. Young Master. Official Yu's housekeeper is here to fetch second Miss Yu. A vicious look flashed across third young Master Fu's lazy eyebrows. Didn't you see what the notice says? Let their fathers come and collect them. Fuck. The head of the Yu residence's steward was about to explode. Why must an adult be the one to bring his daughter home? The crown prince was willful, and everyone in the crown prince's estate wasn't a good person. Whoa. He wanted to go home and find daddy. Meanwhile, Madame Goen, who was blocked at the palace entrance, glared with green eyes. Her finger trembled as she pointed at the gatekeeper. Say that again. Do you know who I am? How dare you block this madam? Emolien. This madam in you power. No. 2. Stand. End of this volume. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.